That is so funny. I love it.
Thank you, everybody. I'd like to call this meeting of the Board of Trustees to order. Could we have a roll call, please?
Thank you. Trustee Bauer,
Yes, here.
Trustee Davis Ford,
Here.
Trustee Goldberg,
Here.
Trustee Levinson,
Here.
Trustee Rosner,
Here.
and President Torpey.
Here.
Thank you. Adequate notice of this meeting had been provided to the press in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act. In addition, notice of this meeting was posted in Village Hall and on the village's website and has been filed in the office of the village clerk. Official action may be taken at tonight's meeting.
Thank you. Could everybody please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please stay standing for a moment of silence. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we have a couple announcements tonight. The annual Maplewood South Orange Baseball and Softball Parade is this Saturday at 9 o'clock. And it will leave New Waterlands Park and end at Cameron Field, where I will be throwing out the first pitch, so wish me luck. The State of the Village address is a week from tonight. It will be here in Village Hall. It's an opportunity for me to report on the state of affairs in town, what we've been working on, all the progress we've made, the challenges that are still ahead of us. If you want to RSVP or find out more information, you can go to the website at southorange.org/SOTV and find out a little bit more information about that. South Orange River Day is Sunday, May 6th from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. That's starting at the Skate House in Meadowland Park by the Duck Pond. This is an annual community cleanup that's organized by the South Orange Environmental Commission. And it's a great event. There'll be a bike tour, edible plants walk, some exhibits, displays, and an ultimate frisbee clinic. So there's a little more information at soriverday.org. And that's Sunday, May 6th. One last reminder that people can get their ID badges, their recreation ID badges, and they can do so at the Baird. And you can find out a little more information about that if you want to at southorange.org/the Baird. Also, Monday, May 21st is our annual organization meeting of the Board of Trustees. It's a normal public meeting, but every year we gather to reorganize our committees and our structure, and obviously people are certainly welcome to attend that. We do have a proclamation this evening before we get started, which I'll read for folks right now, and that's for National Bike Month. Whereas for more than a century, the bicycle has been an important part of the lives of most Americans, and whereas today millions of Americans engage in bicycling because it is a viable and environmentally sound form of transportation, an excellent form of physical fitness, and provides quality family recreation, and whereas there is a need to promote alternative forms of transportation, such as walking and bicycling to facilitate reducing traffic congestion, pollution, and America's dependence on fossil fuels while improving the health and well-being of all people. And whereas the League of American Bicyclists and independent cyclists throughout our state are promoting greater public awareness of bicycle operation and safety education in an effort to reduce accidents, injuries, and fatalities, now therefore be it proclaimed by the Board of Trustees of the Township of South Orange Village that it hereby designates the month of May 2012 as National Bike Month in the Township of South Orange Village, and encourages citizens of all ages to participate in cycling activities during the month of May to promote greater public awareness of bicycle safety along our streets and roadways, and to promote bicycling as a viable and environmentally sound form of transportation and an excellent form of physical fitness. I don't know if we have folks here that are happy to give this to you. Okay, we have 3 presentations this evening. Our first presentation is Villager of the Month. And we have someone, there we go.
Good evening. It's always the greatest thing to be able to give an award to deserving people, everyday citizens, organizations who enhance the quality of life for all of us in South Orange and beyond. And I'm going to put something on and not take it off. It's a family show.
Oh, just remind people who's giving the Villager of the Month, just a little background just for people who may be tuning in for the first time.
Villager of the Month has been given for the last 30 years by the Community Relations Committee to recognize outstanding residents, everyday people, organizations who find a solution to a problem, facilitate conversations, and enhance the quality of life for us here in South Orange Village and beyond. And so tonight, as a member of the Community Relations Committee, I'm thrilled to be presenting the May Villager of the Month to Seton Hall's DOVE program, Division of Volunteer Efforts, to the students and leaders, not only as an alum in my crowd, but as a neighbor of one of the leaders who I've been in contact with for several years, and we finally met. There's little self-aggrandizement in the giving through the DOVE program. In fact, I wanted to highlight what they were doing, and there was a real shyness about it because the work is what's important, not being recognized. I'm going to give you a few of the reasons why they're being recognized tonight. It's developed through the Campus Ministry Division of Volunteer Efforts to recognize and enhance social justice for all of us. They've established compelling volunteer opportunities in South Orange and Newark. They coordinate with each program site. They manage the scheduling of the volunteers in over 20 programs. Some of the other weekly programs they do is they work with the CP, Cerebral Palsy of Northern New Jersey. They send students, Raphael's Lifehouse. They assist in crisis shelter for recently delivering homeless teenagers. They started Academy Street Firehouse. They mentor Newark children who are affected by HIV and AIDS. They have English as a second language courses twice a week, free on campus to those who wish it. They have adopted grandparents where volunteers visit the nearby White House Healthcare and Rehab Center. They participate in St. John's Soup Kitchen on a weekly basis in Newark. They set up the U.S. Dream Academy where they provide homework help, one-on-one mentoring to middle school children in Orange. They develop Seton Stories, volunteers in the library and read children's stories to small kids. They have done semesterly programs working with the food pantry, Pierre Toussaint Food Pantry. They focus Saturday Stars, Carnival of Fun for ARC, the Association of Retarded Citizens on campus. They work with Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Week. They do turkey and food drive, Christmas toy drive, and I could go on and on. But why am I so pleased to do this? It's because I've seen the kids out there sweeping the streets on weekends with Matt Matthews' Clean Sweep program through the Chamber of Commerce, but not just that. I've worked with them personally down at the animal shelter, cleaning the grounds, cleaning the cages for the animals. Not just that, it's because members of the student body from all walks of life really try to contribute to make it a business relationship within our community, working and trying hard. And it's not just that, but I'm proud as an alum because they serve as that swing position. When our kids have grown up and gone to seek their lives in college, we have the youth and enthusiasm here to keep us honest, as Anderson Cooper would say. The future leaders of our country are right here in our midst. I know Sister Rose Thering, the Director of Judeo-Christian Studies, herself a Villager of the Month awardee at least twice, would be really, really happy. And so tonight I'm going to ask a special guest to come and help me give this award to the Division of Volunteer Efforts on campus. And he's our own Seton Hall pirate, and everybody loves him. And I'd like to introduce Michelle Peterson and Tom Rusomano, the Director and Assistant Director for DOVE. Thank you for everything you do. Michelle, if you'd like to just say one thing, you are a neighbor.
It's a privilege to live in the village, and more so, it's a privilege to know the 2,500 students who do community outreach through our department and to really encounter them in the good that they do. I know many of our residents encounter our students in the bad that they do, and we do calculate about 27,000 hours of community service internationally, locally, and here in South Orange. And so our students have a true heart.
Make sure you're speaking into the microphone.
So our students do have a true heart for service. They know the homeless here in South Orange by name. They know the vulnerable here in South Orange, those with disabilities, and those who just have a need, and our students want to fill that need. So I thank you for this award and this acknowledgement of our students' work.
Thank you, Nancy, for presenting that on behalf of the Community Relations Committee, and obviously a big thank you to Seton Hall and the Doug program for everything that you've contributed to this community and beyond. We have a couple other presentations. Next up is Main Street's presentation. Is Carol here? Yes.
Good evening. Carol Anzalone Newman, Catherine Crenshaw, and Mark Rosenberg from the Main Street South Orange Design Committee. And we're here to present another Design Excellence Award. And this one is long overdue. As you know, Eden Marketplace and Above Restaurant and Bar have been in town for a few years now, and we wanted to recognize what they've done to that building. So Catherine's going to do a little speaking, and I'm going to pass out these handouts.
Fantastic. And Carol, is this? Do you know which one? Okay, and I think especially we wanted to show some pictures that will remind everyone, well, first, all the effort that was done with this building is extensive. And what I think is interesting is some people that are new to the community don't realize how much was done and how much that was done that was historically significant to keep the outside and everything. I'm looking, if you look back at pictures, very similar to the way it did at one time. Here is the before picture. And in construction, during renovation, and finally what we get to enjoy every day, and how much we appreciate the effort and the thought that was put into every aspect of this building. So we'd like to award them a design award in recognition for all that.
I'd like to say one other thing, in that this building could have easily been torn down. They didn't have to do what they did. Many people would have looked at what was there, which we saw in a couple of slides before, and said, there's no way. But in the true spirit of Main Street and the National Trust for Historic Preservation, they decided to take this shell of a building, and I know when I moved here, even with the shop right in there, it was pretty much a shell of a building, and gutted it completely and did a really remarkable renovation. And in 2009, New Jersey Future Smart Growth awarded Eden and the Avenue a Smart Growth Award, and well-deserved. So we just wanted to really thank them for maintaining a classic old structure in the downtown and preserving an existing building. So on that note, Randy Schmidt is here, who is the general manager of, is that correct? Controller, okay, sorry. of Eden, and we wanted to present him this award.
On behalf of the owners, I just want to say thank you. They wish they could have been here, but unfortunately, they both had prior commitments. Thank you very much.
Randy, take that as well? Okay, thanks. And one other thing we just wanted to hand out to you is the final presentation for the meeting, just an update with New Jersey Transit that we had regarding the North Trestle, which is the trestle on South Orange Ave. We met with Sally Morris, our community rep, and a rep from rail operations, the station manager, and a person from the New Jersey Office of Historic Preservation. And this is just a follow-up to the last presentation that we made to you. This is the actual presentation that we did for transit and historic preservation, because that trestle right next to Eden is actually part of the original application, and it is designated a historic space, so we have to be mindful of that. The meeting was really positive, we thought, and the wheels are in motion. Historic preservation is checking on what we can actually do and not do under there, but we got a very positive feeling from the whole meeting with them, so we'll keep you updated.
Carol, I'll wait for your presentation to be over. I have a couple of questions, that's all.
Just one thing that I wanted to add that we included that was not on the previous presentation is we asked about when there's graffiti on the trestle, if there was a way to specify some shades instead of a white or a dark charcoal gray, if there could be a color that we could suggest, a range of some tones that would match with the, to make the graffiti that's covered up by them to just kind of blend into the building. And they were very actually receptive to that. So I think that that's something that we may see happen soon. So we're going to work on getting them those paint shades quickly.
That's great. I have two questions. Thank you, by the way, for your presentation. And they're not really related to the presentation, but maybe you might have some insight because I plan to discuss this today. One is the situation with T-Mobile and that visual atrocity with the gates, you know. I don't know, in your role in Main Street, you've had a discussion with them at all. Have you?
We did via email, but there is actually a meeting being set up currently.
Okay.
Yeah,
to
yeah,
discuss
the
it.
administrator and I are looking into that.
Can you just give us anything, or there's nothing to talk about yet?
It's complicated because it's New Jersey Transit property.
I
So it's just a
understand
little
that.
unclear about exactly how,
If we have any legal standing to,
right, to enforce our ordinances, but we're looking into other ways, other than that chain coming down the window. It's obviously not the look that we want in the downtown.
The problem is our current ordinance actually permits it, if you read the language of the ordinance.
That's somewhat debatable. We're looking into it, you know, I think we'll come back to the board with some
Okay.
information, but
all right, because I put that on the agenda for the legal committee, or I am putting it on to discuss in committee too, but since you're taking the lead, you'll give me some feedback
Certainly let
as
you know
chair of
before
that
that
committee.
meeting, yep.
And I think that we all are on the same page here, meaning all of us here, to address that unsightly, you know, my concern is, you know, that's the, if we don't address this, and hopefully New Jersey Transit will work in partnership with the aesthetics of the town, then it's a slippery slope. And so thank you for taking the initiative to be on top of this. Carol, the other thing is, you didn't return my call, and this was a real easy one.
I did.
Someone asked me
Your
about...
mailbox was full.
I'm guilty. I'm real guilty of that all the time.
that's in the record too.
Yeah. Text me, I respond to text.
Okay.
But anyway, someone asked me a question, and I knew you would know the answer, about when that day spa is opening? Because it was, been under construction for over a
They're
year.
very close. They are putting finishing touches on the inside, and they were about a week or two ago doing hiring, interviewing and hiring. So they're
Good.
very close. It's really beautiful, really beautiful
well-
inside.
You know, I think that it's going to be just a nice addition because it's just something different. I think we have the financial demographics to support an entity like that, and it's not another nail or hair salon.
It's beautiful.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we're looking forward to it.
All right, thank you.
I'll keep you posted.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'll check my voicemail before I accuse you again.
Just give it to Michael.
Okay, yeah, that's a better deal.
Hey, thank you for those presentations. I think we can certainly all agree how great the outside of Eden Gourmet looks, and the inside, actually, compared to what that space looked like years ago. Next up is SOPAC. Yep.
That's it, she could have just handed it to you, but it's on already. That went through, yeah, if you gotta go back, use it.
We need to give a training class on that, right?
Good evening, President Torpy and trustees and Mr. Lewis. Thank you for your time this evening, and as always, thank you for all the work you do for the village. I think that this will be a rather brief report this evening. Going on to the update on our attendance to date from July 1. We're in a fiscal year through March 31, so for the first 3 quarters. For this year, we've had 9,289 people attend shows at SOPAC, ticketed shows at SOPAC, and 7,200 versus 7,202 last year, and these are actually just for SOPAC shows. Our loft performances, we didn't have loft performances last year. We've had 5 events, 2 blues events so far, and 3 jazz events, for a total of attendance of 316. I actually think it was probably higher than that. Both are just exceptional. They're on Sunday evenings at 5 o'clock. It only costs $15 to get in. There's a cash bar available, and you get to see some just remarkable, sometimes Grammy-nominated musicians performing for you. At the moment, unofficially, jazz is pulling a bigger audience than blues. So, at any rate, go jazz. SOPAC school time performances. We do private performances where school students are bussed in. This year, attendance so far is 4,612 versus 2,973 last year. We tried to beef up that program a little bit this year. And then down at the bottom, you can see attendance for rentals. They're fairly similar, 4,872 this year versus 4,554 last year. That includes our major customer, so to speak, partner, Seton Hall University. For total attendance in the main theater, in the theater of 19,089 this year versus 14,729 last year. There we go. As far as upcoming performances, I won't list those. Our season ends on June the 1st, so we're winding down, but you'll see the upcoming shows that Seton Hall has and that we have. A couple of things I wanted to point out. Celebrate South Orange. We applied for and received a grant from the New Jersey Commission on the Arts last year to help coordinate a part of the Celebrate South Orange called Arts for All. This will be outdoor music concerts, free of charge, from 2 p.m. to approximately 9 p.m. on the 16th of June, and we're coordinating producing all of that. The concerts in the park, we're working with the village for the 2nd year. They start Wednesday, July the 11th, and as you can see, end on Wednesday, August the 8th. And I'm just about done booking those. I'll have those names for you shortly. Also, I don't have this on there, but Giants of Jazz, this is hot news. We've already decided when their date is for this year. They're going to be back in SOPAC for the 2nd time, Saturday, October the 6th this year. And it was really quite a successful concert last year. Once again, I won't go over these one by one. These are all of the rentals and special events that we've had in SOPAC from January 1 through March 31st of this year. The next page, once again, I won't go over them individually. These are all of the rentals and/or special events that we already know of and have booked taking us through about mid-summer. On the development report, shorter development report this time. A few weeks ago, we hosted our second annual Essex County Business Leaders Breakfast. Last year, about 70 folks attended. This year, it was over 100. We had 3 speakers this year: Joseph DiVincenzo, the CEO for Essex County; Karen Franzini, the CEO of the New Jersey Economic Development Authority; and Sharon Waters, the deputy editor of the online magazine NJ Biz. And it was really a wonderful event. And the reason we do this is exposure, bring people into the Village of South Orange that haven't been here, bring people into SOPAC that haven't been here, and then also we use it as a development tool. Last year we obtained directly from that event 2 rentals. One occurred that morning, and we attained a couple sponsors from that event, and we will be contacting all the businesses that were present to hopefully sponsor a show at SOPAC next year. The grants, we've written several others, but some that we've actually received are New Jersey State Council on the Arts for the Celebrate South Orange co-op, PSEG Foundation, the Verizon Foundation. Sponsors for this year, we have sponsors, corporate and individual, totaling $50,000, in excess of $50,000. The major New Jersey Arts Commission grants was submitted a couple months ago. We will find out, we will hear word from them about mid-June, so keep your fingers crossed on that. We will begin working on FY13 Season 7 sponsors very, very shortly. Our annual fundraiser this year is a benefit concert. It stars or features the Stylistics with Russell Tompkins Jr. He is one of the original singers from that group. He's the high falsetto. They had many #1 hits: You Make Me Feel Brand New, You're a Big Girl Now, You Are Everything, and Trusty Goldberg's favorite, Bet You By Golly, Wow. And at any rate, really, they do a wonderful performance. We expect it to sell out, and I would purchase your tickets soon. And then we are very, very busy working on the coming season right now. So that's my part of the report. I'm going to turn it over to Chairman of the Board, Chairman of the Board, Tony Leitner, for
Before
the
you
financial. Yes.
sit down, I have a
Sure.
couple of quick questions.
Yes, ma'am.
What do you contribute to the significant increase in attendance?
In attendance?
Yeah, from 11 to 12.
I think 2 things. First of all, I think trying to pick shows a little more selectively. I mean, with a little, and I don't know what was done prior to my time, but at least for me, with a little more thought behind it. I mean, looking at all the data from all the shows that we've had in the past to go, oh, that kind of show sells, or oh, that show doesn't sell at all. Also, there are online sites that I can go to, you have to subscribe to, that if I'm thinking of a certain artist, I can actually look up and get data of how they performed at other theaters around the country, so that you try to qualify them a little bit more. And then I think the other one is, we really beefed up our social marketing this year. It was basically, other than our website, kind of non-existent last year, and the season was announced earlier. I was fortunate enough to get this job and arrived on Labor Day of 2010. The season, so that was like September the 6th. The season was supposed to start on November the 4th, and a season brochure wasn't even printed, and the season hadn't even been announced. So I think trying to get the word out harder, earlier, and a little more selective in the artist, and we hope that that will continue to improve.
And I have just one more comment, and
Yes,
it's
ma'am.
positive feedback. I attended, along with Trustee Levinson and President Torpy, the business breakfast, and I want to tell you that it was well attended. The people in attendance, there was a diverse demographics as far as geographical and also types of businesses, and it was well done and well run, and you did a great job. So I think that your attendance should continue to go. You really did. And I think there's some people in the audience who were there, bunnies, right. I would not encourage you to talk from there, though. You have to wait to public comment to come up, because I don't want to get in trouble for creating things out of order. But anyway, I just want to congratulate you on that event.
Well, thank you for your comments, and we plan to keep it up next year. And then for you all, this is a postcard that tells about the stylistics, and for anybody in the audience, I'll have some on the table downstairs on your way out. And now, Chairman of the Board, Mr. Leitner.
This obviously is a very summary report. The full report for the 9 months ended in March should be with you shortly. Our controller is part-time. He's also an accountant. He does.
Can you speak directly into the mic? It's hard to...
Trying.
Okay.
Okay. Our controller does a lot of tax preparation work, so it's kind of the worst period in the world for him to try to produce our numbers. He did give us a draft of the financials for the quarter. These numbers, we believe, are accurate, but in terms of all of the categories in the report you'll see, you'll be getting it in the next week or so. You know, we continue to struggle, and from an operating point of view. As we've noted before, the earned revenue number is shown differently than last year, where we would have shown ticket sales. Now we only report revenue as earned when the show is complete. So that's a real number. We have an inventory, as Michael told you, we have an inventory of shows yet to be done, and we do expect that number to hopefully increase nicely, especially with the Stylistics benefit concert on June 1st. You know, from a cash flow point of view, we are challenged. We're doing our best from the development perspective, especially to look for sponsorships for the forthcoming season, so that we can sign artists up and have a program that's hopefully as full, if not fuller, in our calendar as this past year. So the expenses are running a little bit behind, a little bit over our budget, but we do believe that you know, that number is as controlled as we can make it. The biggest component of the expense number is not our administrative staff. The total budget for the year for the administrative staff is less than $500,000. So this represents artist fees and everything else that we pay. Utilities. Fortunately, we caught a break on the utility number this year. The warm winter really helped us out. But we are looking forward to you know, working with the village. We expect we will not be break even for the year, but we're going to try to hone our deficit down as much as possible by June 30th.
Question.
I'm sorry, by the way, that I'm giving this report. John Zubek, our treasurer, had family matters today, and so I'm definitely the second fiddle here.
Question regarding sponsorships. Can you just share with us very quickly your strategic plan, or something about your plan to acquire sponsors? What I want to hear is how aggressive your plan is.
Linda Honorevoli has worked up the deck, if you will, which is the proposal that we bring to businesses to show them the advantages of being a sponsor. Sponsorship here is a partnership. We expect the sponsor to get something out of their relationship with us. So, for example, signing them up as a sponsor means they will get recognized in the program that goes to 35,000 people, as well as the recognition on our website for all that they do, plus additional comps in terms of ability to bring business guests to the performances and so forth. We are targeting, obviously, everyone who came, or all the businesses that came to our business leaders breakfast. One of our sponsors last year signed up as a result of that business leaders breakfast, so we know that there is potential there. We're going back to folks who sponsored last year, and we're looking for board member sponsorships as well. I've sponsored a program every year. We expect that there will be additional and significant contributions from the board towards sponsorships. Obviously, there's a little bit less in it for us because we're not promoting ourselves, but we get a couple free tickets if you can call a substantial contribution and getting tickets for that free.
I'd just like to say that, we, meaning the Board of Trustees, including myself, still have, a lot of concerns about the financial challenges ahead, but I personally want to recognize you and thank you for the time that you volunteer for the abuse, but also for your financial contributions, which have been substantial in sponsoring events. So I think it's important, that while we, identify the challenges and that just aren't acceptable, that we have to resolve and get to a better place, I also want to personally recognize you for all the great things you do, not only just in time, but also in financial resources.
Well, thank you very much. I think we certainly have not met all of the objectives that we had when I took over as chair. I must say that at that point I had a lot of hopes for how we would do that weren't achieved. On the other hand, the basic idea, the basic vision of the village in having an art center along with the movie theater be a key to the redevelopment and anchor South Orange, I believe has been achieved. We have operated the art center for 6 years now, and its purpose, that's what we were intended to do. It would have been nice if we had started with a kitty of a couple $1 million, but we didn't. I do appreciate, by the way, and I thank you for your comments about me, but many of the other board members have contributed substantially, as have other citizens of South Orange, and I particularly appreciate the support of citizens of South Orange who already, pay a great deal in taxes, as we do in Maplewood, by the way, and so the fact that they would support the arts and support this facility is just terrific. Our board is now diverse geographically. We would like to continue to build the board. That's going to be key to our future, and we're working on that, as I've said. But I really appreciate your comments, and I look forward to the next phase of our relationship. And I thank the trustees for all the support that they've given to SOPAC right from the beginning.
Tony, I have a couple questions. I know John's not here, so they may need to be directed to John. But in the footnotes, there's some references to the pass-through and the subsidy and whatnot. And I don't know if this is an error or what you were saying. Where you're saying the original budget included a $400,000 yearly subsidy, while the actual is only $195. As I recall, the actual was actually $229. And I don't know if you're basing this on a 9-month, 9 months to date, but then you're giving the $400,000, which is an annual amount. So your numbers are
I didn't check this number over before I came over, but my recollection is as yours. One of our problems is that because your grant of the subsidy and our fiscal year are on 2 different calendars, this number may be correct as far as it goes, but cover kind of a different point. But my recollection is yours, that your subsidy for last year was $229, and I believe it hasn't been set for this year yet, so we are being funded at the same level. Right. It would help if we were funded at a slightly higher level. It would help our cash flow quite a bit, but since you asked.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I understood the desire for a higher amount, no question. And one other question. We've talked about this in the past, but I don't see it broken down in here. Now that you do have your liquor license, do you have any information you could share about how that has helped? I assume that goes towards earned revenue.
Well, I have no anecdotal, I have only anecdotal information, which is that the marketing of the loft is definitely going to be improved. I can't cite that any particular rentals are now here that wouldn't have been here last year. What I can say is that certainly for our own events and the jazz and the loft, and we're actually starting to make money now on our liquor sales, and I think that those kinds of events that we can hold in the loft have been helpful. So I think the additional revenue there is helpful. But we're certainly hopeful. We're marketing like crazy, and I certainly suggest to the public here that if you've got a wedding or a special event, birthday, grandma's birthday, whoever it is, anniversary, the loft is for you. We are one of the, premier sites within South Orange, and at sunset, especially in the summer, it's beautiful. And by the way, you can also rent the main stage and have a real great performance there, and then come up to the loft and have dinner and drinks. Thanks for the opportunity to plug the loft.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, next up is approval of minutes from the April 9th meeting.
You're not going to do public?
That's going to be
Comments?
after the
Okay.
minutes. There was a motion. Is there a second? All in favor? Any opposed?
I have a question through you, Mr. President, about the minutes to our clerk.
Okay.
I just want to know, are the minutes verbatim, or are they a summary of our meetings?
It's a summary. The Open Public Meetings Act allows us to take what is called comprehensible minutes, which is what we do.
Oh, and so that I understand. So our minutes for our meetings, which is allowed by the state statute, is a summary, as opposed to a minutes that is transcribed verbatim, word by word.
That is correct.
Okay.
We keep the audio-video productions on our website, so they're archived, so anybody who wants to go and actually revisit a meeting, we can do that through the video production.
Absolutely, so we have a record of that, but what we just voted on is a summary.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to open the meeting up for public comments at this time. I don't know if someone can grab the sheet in the back.
Oh, Janine, she wants to add her name.
Oh, well, you can speak without signing it.
You can
Say anything, didn't sign up.
Okay, we've got a number of people here, so I'm going to ask people to keep all your comments to 3 minutes. If you can try and time yourself, that'd be great. If not, I'm going to have to ask people
I'll time it
to
for
stop.
you.
Okay.
Why don't we do it? Robin?
That doesn't really have a timer, actually.
Oh.
I do,
Thing.
if you don't mind.
No, that's fine. If you want to do that, just let me know. Okay, Lisa?
No, because I want to restate it.
And when you get to the podium, if you could just state your name and your address for the record.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm Lisa Lacan. I reside at 107 2nd Street. On April 15, 2012, at approximately 12:30 a.m., my family and I were awakened by a very disturbing sound outside our home. Upon looking out the window, I saw what appeared to be at least 30 to 40 young adults screaming, shouting, using profanity, throwing bottles, fighting, trespassing on my neighbor's property, and recklessly driving up and down the street. It was at that moment when I called 911. While I was on the phone with the dispatcher, the police arrived on the scene. While in the presence of the police officers, the tension from the rowdy crowd began to escalate. Basically, a mob scene was unfolding in my front yard in the presence of my children. To my surprise, I did not observe police officers become law enforcers, but rather what I witnessed from the police officers was very disappointing and to some extent embarrassing as a South Orange resident. I witnessed the police officers breaking up the crowd and asking them to immediately leave the scene. To some, the policeman's action may be acceptable. However, to me and my family, their actions were deplorable, disappointing, and very passive by shooing them away. This mob, witnessed by the responding police officers and my family, were witnessed by doing several things. 1, trespassing on private property. 2, committing acts of assault and battery by breaking a glass on someone's head and they were bleeding profusely from their face. 3, reckless behavior behind the wheel of a motor vehicle. I thought the police officers would apprehend some of these violators in order to identify the participants by running their names, in order to know and not speculate where they came from. 2, to see if there are any outstanding warrants from anyone involved in that crowd, and to ascertain if any of them is affiliated with parole or probation. Instead, I felt these violators received a pass to break the law, and unfortunately, they will continue to display similar unlawful
30
actions
seconds.
in South Orange if they believe the law does not apply to them. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you leave your information with the clerk here, we can look into this and certainly get back to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brenda?
Hello, my name is Brenda Spagnola. I actually live across the street.
Please speak into the mic.
I'm sorry. I live across the street from Lisa, and that night I was actually up with my 13-year-old daughter who witnessed the entire thing. I also have a 11-month-old baby and a 4-year-old son who also witnessed it. It's not okay for these kids to be getting away with this. It's not okay for the police to just let them all go. The other thing is that the Seton Hall kids all have parties in the area. They're up 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning yelling and screaming while we all have small children. The other thing is also that the Seton Hall children, or kids that go to school, get picked up on the corner of My Street and Academy, as well as the corner of 2nd Street and Prospect, at all hours of the night, which is also unacceptable for them to be walking up and down residential streets, drunk and intoxicated, yelling and screaming, and basically acting like fools. There's no reason for children of their ages to be acting that way in public, especially when there are young children in the area that can hear them. I just think that something needs to be done. And that's it.
Thank you. And I'd offer to you, too, if you'd like to leave your contact information, a phone number, or mailing address where we can reach you when we look into this, we can get back to you.
Absolutely, thank you.
Jennifer?
My name is Jennifer Lee, and I also reside at 106 2nd Street. I live above Mrs. Spagnola, and I take care of an 84-year-old elderly woman that is bedridden. She has been confined to her bed for over a year now, and having to deal with everything that goes on 2nd Street, either with the college houses or with individuals coming in. We've had to call the police, I know, 3 times at least. Once because of an intruder in our backyard. Once because of a noise. The noise coming from all the college houses around. I don't know if this town has, or this village has, a noise ordinance, but if it does not, then I believe that one ordinance should be put into place. If it does, then South Orange PD needs to enforce it. I come from also a small town in northern New Jersey, and I know we have a noise ordinance, and if it's broken, then it's handled and dealt with appropriately by the police department, not instead of it's a weekend and we should let them bypass it. It's okay, it's not too late. What's too late? So if you could look into that, that would be great.
Thank you, and I can certainly say we do have noise ordinances on the books, and we'll look into this. It's certainly not appropriate for those kind of activities to be taking place that late at night. And again, if you leave all your contact information or one person's contact information, myself or someone else will get back to you once we look into it.
Thank you for bringing it to our attention. We were not aware of that, so thank you for letting us know.
Carol Barry Austin?
Good evening, Carol Barry Austin, 125 Reynolds Place. I'm here this evening actually reading a statement from someone that couldn't make it here this evening, Miss Heisler, Barbara Heisler. conversations about race. This was actually sent to Patch. I've been following the conversation about funding of the South Orange Maplewood Community Coalition on Race via the pages of Patch with concern. While the stated conversation is about funding, my fear is that it is about so much more, least of which is a misunderstanding of what the work of intentional integration is. I do know something about this work. I was the first executive director of the Coalition on Race and served in that position over the course of a 10-year period. I am also the former executive director of Fund for an Open Society, an organization that worked for decades across the country with communities and organizations seeking to capture and sustain that elusive condition in America known as integration. A few years ago, the South Orange Civic Organization asked me to speak at their annual Martin Luther King Beloved Community Awards event about the current state of integration in our country. The Coalition has posted these remarks on their website at www.twotowns.org. In these remarks, I allude to the backsliding in efforts in some communities that we view as early pioneers and models for developing whole communities. While on staff at Open, we undertook an in-depth study of what worked in communities wishing to remain integrated and what didn't. Those studies were published in a journal, Integral, the Journal of Fund for an Open Society in 2009. What we found in several instances was that efforts which had been, by different measures, considered successful became undone when a community determined the work completed and no longer in need of support. This determination was not so much a statement as it was the closing of the office that oversaw the intentional integration efforts or community defunding of that project. These actions in these cases were not taken against the work, but rather because the community thought the work was finished or thought that it could sustain itself. But what we know about racial integration in our country is that there are
You have
forces,
30 seconds.
Okay, forces and factors working against us systemically and profoundly deep that would turn back even the most successful and seemingly sustainable work unless continual attention and effort is given. I'm going to skip a few paragraphs and just go to the last sentence, which says, as I said in my address in 2010, the journey to integration is far from over. It is risky and requires courage. It means creative programs in the public and private sectors for opening doors to people who have been deprived of opportunity and who continue to be deprived for reasons of racial identity and the enduring history of racial issues. The journey to integration must be a journey of healing, and healing comes only through conscious effort, outreach, willingness to be vulnerable, desire to reconcile, and sometimes putting ourselves in situations of profound discomfort. I'm going to skip the last paragraph and just say from Barbara
Your time is
Heisler,
up.
Maplewood, New Jersey. And as a former chair of the Community of Coalition on Race, I wholeheartedly agree with her sentiments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Leslie?
Leslie Pagani, 10 Hart Drive in South Orange. I'm here tonight to give my support for the CCR and also urge you, as you found money for Main Street, please find the money for the CCR. My children grew up in this community, as a lot of you who sat on this board, and benefited from what the CCR did in our school system. They have a good size membership, and I urge you, as you found money for Main Street, find money for the CCR.
Thank you. Phyllis Peterman?
Good evening, Phyllis Peterman, 343 Cumberland Road, South Orange. I urge the trustees to continue their monetary support of the coalition I was a trustee for 9 years and continue to support the coalition in whatever ways I can. Intentional integration is still a very bold and unique aspect of most communities. Diversity integration just does not happen and does not just continue to happen. There has to be hard work connected with it, and the committees of the coalition do that, sometimes in a bold and splashy way, but other times in a very quiet, unassuming, unique way. For instance, the touring committee makes sure that all parts of our town are seen, makes sure that realtors intentionally show all who come into their offices the various parts of South Orange and Maplewood. I was a part of the Neighborhood and Civic Life Committee, which encouraged block associations, neighbors getting to know each other, sharing information. All these things go a long way in terms of preserving the kind of community that people from all over the tri-state area come to Maplewood, South Orange to be a part of. As I said, it just doesn't happen. There has to be intentionality to it, and I would urge the village leaders to make sure that this continues to happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill Calabrese.
Bill Calabrese, 5 Hoskier Road, former village president. I always consider myself a very lucky man. I usually tend to make the right decisions because I always believe that God's looking over me and trying to direct me in the right direction. Even though sometimes I might go kicking and screaming and dragging, He usually leads me in the right direction. In the late 80s and the early 90s, this country was going through the same problems it's going through today. We had a housing bubble, the housing market collapsed, and it was very difficult to sell houses and to get people to buy in this community. So we decided as a governing body to rebuild this town, to make it the best town we possibly could. So we started with the bricks and mortars. We narrowed streets, we widened sidewalks, we dedicate ourselves to bring in developers, condominiums, Sloan Street, theaters, art centers, supermarkets, whatever we could, but something was missing. And someplace in the mid-90s, somebody came to me and said, Bill, there's a group that started, a volunteer group called the Coalition on Race, and they spoke in Maplewood, they like to speak in South Orange, can they speak in South Orange? And I said, well, sure, why not? Then the naysayers came to me. Bill, you don't want to listen to them. You don't want to do what they want to do. You definitely don't want to do it. It'll only be detrimental to South Orange. So I listened, I sat there, as our illustrious president is sitting here today, Alex, and I listened to them. And you know what went through my mind? Thank God I found people who were going to help me make this community what I really wanted to make it into, something special and unique. And I gave my commitment that night. And they did make it something special and unique. They went out, they sold South Orange, they integrated, and when I say integrated, sometimes I use words that are hard to understand, but they integrated in the fact that they brought people to each and every one of our streets, to each and every one of our neighborhoods. South Orange became a model community for this nation, and I was very proud of what they did. So I'm asking you tonight, please don't shortchange South Orange, don't shortchange yourself, and don't shortchange everything that has happened in this and Maplewood to make it what it is today. Thank you.
Thank you. Lee Boswell May.
I'm Lee Boswell May, and I live at 173 South Orange Avenue. I produce the Giants of Jazz and Jazz in the Loft, and I'm third generation South Orange. My grandfather, John Henderson, started the first black business in town in 1918. Henderson Cab Company on 12 Sloane Street.
Can you speak up? I can barely hear you.
Henderson Cab Company on 12 Sloane Street. And I got to tell you, I've seen the best and the worst of this town as far as race relations go. When my parents in 1957, when I graduated from the First Street School, they wanted to buy a house outside of the quote-unquote area of 5th to South Orange Avenue, Prospect to Ridgewood Road, which was where most of the Afro-Americans live, which is the center of the First Baptist Church. But they wanted to get outside, and they kept going to real estate agents, and they were taken to East Orange, they were taken to Orange, and my parents said, wait a minute, we want to stay in South Orange. South Orange was redlined. The South Orange Village Hall had no people of color working here other than 2 policemen. My mother, Elizabeth Boswell, was the first meter maid here, and she did it so that she could bring people of color into the Village Hall. And I got to tell you, as a 12-year-old going to the South Orange Junior High, my mother's giving people tickets. I caught it. I caught it. And I said to my mother, "Why are you doing this to me?" She said, "I'm doing it so you don't have to. I'm going to bring people into the Village Hall." South Orange had a pattern of discrimination. It was a great place to grow up. When you're playing down in Cameron Field, you didn't know who was black and white. You were just playing games. But when it came down to the real crux of the community, there was a red line. Black people could only live in certain areas, and they couldn't get in certain jobs. As you know, Elizabeth Boswell became the court clerk of this town. As you know, I've been very involved in the cultural and arts and cultural affairs in this town. But the bottom line is the reason that I'm so concerned is because if we give up on this coalition, what's going to prevent the old way from coming back? If we didn't
You have 30
need-
seconds.
If we didn't need groups like the coalition, then the NAACP, the ACLU, all those organizations would have gone away in 1963.
Thank you. Andrew Weinberger?
Andrew Weinberger, 311 Prospect Street. Good evening, Village President Torpy and the Village Trustees. I have lived in South Orange since 1987 with my wife Meredith Sue Willis, who is a founding member of the Community Coalition on Race and who is presently a member of their Board of Trustees. I am a physician in practice in West Orange. I'm speaking tonight to encourage the town to continue financial support of the Community Coalition on Race. Although I am not an officer or board member, I strongly support the organization because I believe it has helped to promulgate stable integration in South Orange and Maplewood. I've been a firm believer in integration, even preceding my college efforts to help encourage voters to register in Lynchburg, Virginia in 1966. And indeed, a major factor in our choosing to move to South Orange from Brooklyn was that it was an integrated town and that was and is the kind of town we wanted to raise our son in. He went to Clinton School, South Orange Middle School, and is a proud graduate of Columbia High School, where he had friends and teachers of many ethnicities. When he went to college, he actually had less of a diverse experience than he did in high school here, where school here was much more like the adult world most of us live in. We feel that the integration of South Orange is an important factor in raising children in a diverse world. The experiences here are difficult to match in other towns, and the positive experiences, I believe, have made better citizens of our students and our residents. Stable integration is a goal that requires work to attain, but moreover requires continued efforts to maintain. For these reasons, I urge South Orange to continue financial support for the Community Coalition on Race, as it is important for every person in this town. Thank you for your time and attention.
Perry Smilo?
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. My name is Perry Smilo. I live at 73 Harding Drive here in South Orange. I'm here tonight to speak in support of continued funding for the Community Coalition on Race. My husband and I moved to South Orange over 8 years ago. We chose to make South Orange our home because we saw here a unique and vibrant town, a community which values diversity, embraces difference, and which welcomes a wide range of opinions and people. We saw in these two towns something different than other communities throughout the state of New Jersey. We saw a place where we could make a home for ourselves and our school-age daughter, and we haven't been sorry. However, in recent weeks, I've been deeply disturbed by the lack of civil discourse surrounding the Board of Education elections. On the day following the election last week, I woke up wondering to whom I could turn for help in beginning the hard work of healing from the divisiveness of the election. And the single place that I could think of in this community was the Community Coalition on Race. The Coalition's mission has always been to bring our diverse community together in meaningful and educational ways. It has been to help our town continue to be a community of openness and welcome for all. It has been to shine light into the dark corners that exist in every community, but which are more often left in the darkness, rather than tackling the extraordinarily difficult issues of race and class. I see the work of the Community Coalition as just that. It is the challenging and painful work of exposing racism, the challenging work of providing educational and artistic and other programming that help us bridge difference, and the healing work of creating opportunities for reasonable-minded people to come together in civil discourse, even when they disagree on particulars, to address the very real and difficult issues which come with choosing to live in an intentionally integrated community. And it is this work that continues to make, I believe, this community a highly desirable place to purchase a home, to raise a family. I also believe it's helping to keep our housing prices as high as possible in an historic economic downturn. Can the Community Coalition on Race survive without our town's local funding?
You have 30 seconds.
I believe it will be difficult, but I think it can be done. However, what does local township support provide that no other funding can provide? It's this outward symbol of the community's commitment to the diversity which continues to make us a unique and desirable destination. In addition, as you may know, in these times of economic hardship, funding sources outside of governmental agencies want to know that small organizations like the Community Coalition on Race are backed with the support of their local community. It's critically important.
Your time is up.
Thank you. It's critically important that the township continue to provide support to this organization, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Pastor Richardson.
Good evening. Terry Richardson, 70 University Court, South Orange, New Jersey. My wife and I came to live here in South Orange, and we've lived here for the past 15 years. We raised our children here. Our children have gone through Marshall, Jefferson, South Orange Middle. Recently, my daughter, a sophomore at Columbia and a junior Olympic champion, has received distinction of being Athlete of the Week, where she represents not only herself, but all of Essex County, the school district, and this community. My oldest son, while at Marshall, was classified with a learning disability. My wife and I accepted the challenge of helping him become the best him ever. As he matriculated, we worked with him and a team of professionals from this district. Today, he is a college freshman, no longer classified, and has earned an academic athletic scholarship and holds a 3.6 GPA. What makes us proud is that we raised our children in a community that affords them opportunity to excel academically and socially. I come here to support and appeal to the Community Coalition on Race and appeal to the board, you tonight, that you strongly consider continued funding of the Community Coalition on Race, a community organization whose mission has benefited this town in the service they offer and has helped to give them or us national recognition for being a town of integrity, where families like yours and mine, rich, poor, black, white, young, old, single, married, can come and live and discover and contribute to the riches of this our diverse culture that adds to community life and wellness. I recently heard the unfortunate comments and opinions made against the coalition that perhaps may or may not persuade your decision to refund the coalition. I have worked alongside the coalition in numerous community initiatives to help maintain a sense of community pride. Without reservations, can say that at no time has this organization served or represented our community from a biased, self-serving, or partisan point of view. The coalition helps make us an essential part helps make up an essential part of our community that speaks to who we are as a diverse township. The absence of the coalition will certainly cripple what this town stands for in welcoming all who desire to be productive citizens, positively contributing to who we are as a town. As an adjunct professor, I teach sociology and social problems. As a doctoral candidate in Metro Urban Ministry, as well as 15 years of a clergy member of this community, it is in my opinion that it would be an embarrassment to our residents for the governing board to refuse to fund an important organization like the coalition. Instead, I ask you to look at the record of the coalition and their record over the years, and do not allow your decision to refund based on biased individual community comments attempted to litigate misconstrued efforts of the coalition. I believe such attempts serve the interest of a small sect. So if you do not fund the coalition based on loose comments aimed at litigating and scrutinizing every attempt the coalition makes, then I believe that you are representing only a small sect of this community, and you're opening the door to a message sent to beyond the borders of this township that says that we are not open to diversity.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak at this time? If so, please just come up to the podium, state your name and address.
That's a first. My name is Chip Matson. I'm former chair of the Community Coalition on Race and current co-chair of the Finance and Development Committee, so this is very important to me. I really want to thank the residents of this community that have stepped forward, particularly Leslie Bugani, who I believe still has the best pizzas in New Jersey, and Bill Calabrese for a history lesson that I hope is not lost on this board. I want to continue the comments that were started by my friend and colleague Carol Berry Austin from Barbara Heisler. Funding of an intentional integration effort is not as much about the amount of funding, though that certainly is important, as about the statement that is made by providing the funding. The statement that the work of creating and sustaining a whole community, one that values racial integration in its housing, education, and civic structures, is important to this community, and makes that statement in a way that we often express our values and our systems through our dollars. That work takes dollars. Community gatherings, difficult discussions, outreach to new and prospective neighbors, ordinance and real estate oversight, it does take dollars. The work of intentional integration is political because issues of race are intensely political in our country, but it need not and should not be partisan or political. What we have begun to create here, and I reiterate, begun to create here, what we celebrate here is something rare and beautiful in this country. Is it easy? No. Recent community exchanges remind us that this is not easy and requires constant work. It's my hope we can work through our discomfort and continue our work intentionally, effectively in developing and sustaining our whole community, and that both of our towns continue to put our money where our hearts, and I'll add, and where our mouths are. Barbara Heisler. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Roy Smith.
You got to speak
Just
into
make
the
sure
mic.
you speak into the microphone.
My wife and I moved to this wonderfully diverse community 22 years ago. That's a few years before the Coalition on Race Relations began its
Excuse me, sir. If you don't speak into the mic, the television program can't pick you
I'm
up.
sorry, is this better?
Yes.
So, first let me thank all of the trustees for all of the good work you do. Let me thank all the other people in this audience which show the community spirit, and let me be a strong voice in dissent. It doesn't matter what a great job of integration South Orange has done. The community may be doing wonderfully good work, The issue at hand is whether the town should be funding this organization. And one of the premises of politics throughout this country is you stop funding an organization when the organization takes political sides. In both of the last two school of board educations, the community took sides. They should no longer be funded by the Township of South Orange. Everybody else has watched their taxes soar. My taxes have soared along with all of your taxes. People have to start cutting a budget everywhere, and you can't always pay for everything that everybody would like. There are 100 organizations in this town, all of which could merit serious consideration of funding. But when one of those organizations takes political sides, they lose the right to funding from the town. Thank you.
Thank you. Just come on up. If people want to queue over there, that's fine. It's not really a classroom.
Through you, Mr. President, may I ask that because there are so many speakers and we have a lot on the agenda, that if you've spoken once, not to come back, just to have one turn at the mic?
I think that's fine.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Crone, 129 Kenneth Terrace, South Orange. I've come out tonight because I read that the Board of Trustees at this meeting would again take up the issue of whether the Community Coalition on Race should receive continued support from South Orange taxpayers. I'm disappointed because I thought this issue was settled. And to discover that it's come up again suggests that the board still hasn't come to terms with three fundamental problems inherent in committing town resources to the CCR. Number one, the CCR is, as others have mentioned, only one of many local organizations whose work our tax dollars might support. Were we to fund all local nonprofits that seek to advance our town's prosperity, our schools' quality, or the general welfare of the community, we'd be allocating a pittance to every worthy group. Tom Kearns' HK Community Foundations, for instance, or the Achieve Foundation, or the South Orange Historical Preservation Society, and many others. You must therefore make choices, but making those choices in a way that responds to the needs and preferences of the whole community shouldn't be an ad hoc process. Number two, the CCR is an organization that has done important work in the past and whose current objectives are often laudable, but which has taken positions over the years that many in the community find questionable or even at odds with the organization's reason for being. Positions on pedagogical matters, for instance, which many consider beyond the CCR's purview, or positions suggesting antipathy toward a public official or a preference for particular candidates for public office. Someone countered that objections to CCR stances on people or issues of local importance are indications of ill will, misunderstanding, or bias, all of which the CCR is meant to combat. But your job as trustees is not to judge the motivations of the citizenry and then allocate their taxes according to your estimation of their righteousness. If we continue to support the CCR, why shouldn't we invite a local branch of the Anti-Defamation League or the Lambda Legal Defense Fund to set up shop in South Orange at taxpayers' expense? Someone will always be available to object to the best efforts of a worthy nonprofit, but it should be obvious that committing public resources from tight budgets to management of organizations that generate controversy over whether they serve the whole citizenry isn't appropriate. As Mr. Madsen points out, the CC is a political organization. The CCR would like to receive general operating support, but you, as trustees, should not be committing that category of funding to any organization that can't show an overwhelming documented contribution to the economic vitality of the community or provide services that would otherwise have to be secured by taxpayers at a far greater financial cost.
Your time is up.
If you issue an RFP and the CCR competes with other organizations to supply discrete programs or services for a fixed period of time, then the CCR could reasonably be awarded specific contracts, be evaluated regularly, and be expected to meet deadlines for deliverables.
Thank you.
But there is no reason for any nonprofit that doesn't provide essential services to expect indefinite support from a township. The CCR can't be an exception.
Excuse me, please honor the time commitment so we can be consistently fair to everyone. Thank you.
Is there any other member of the public who wishes to speak at this time?
Nancy Ines Glazer, 125 Sherman Place, 33 years here. I was listening to everybody's comments, and attending the Interfaith Holocaust services last night made me aware, again, as I am each and every year, that when you think you don't need to keep a lookout for things, that's really when you do. And so it isn't about funding a special nonprofit, it's funding a mission as a community on how we view ourselves. It's more than a nonprofit effort. It's a different mission and a different vision, and I would encourage you to reconsider this, having received an email from a sitting government official telling me that they were in favor of a particular Board of Ed candidate. I don't believe that anyone should force upon others their view politically. I choose to receive emails. I don't want them sent to me unsolicited. I would appreciate everybody just rethinking it, because just when you think you don't need to keep your eyes open, that's when you do. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak at this time?
Good evening. My name is Alyssa Aronson. I'm a longtime resident of this town. I'm in South Orange. In South Orange...
Alyssa, speak into the mic, please.
I'm sorry. In South Orange, we teach diversity to the children and residents. Fund the CCR.
Thank you.
You have Alyssa, you have 2 minutes and 50 seconds left.
Is there any other member of the public who wishes to speak? Please come forward.
I've lived here for 40 years.
You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I didn't come here tonight to talk about the CCR. I actually came to hear about ZOPAC. And I'm not here to express an opinion about the desirability or non-desirability of the organization. I'm here to simply give a little bit of a lesson in history. 1 year ago, when the budget was being finalized, there was an agreement between the Board of Trustees and the leadership of the CCR that they would not be funded after 2011 and would instead receive services in kind, such as space in Village Hall, the use of telephones, copying machines, and the Wi-Fi internet connection, which would be valued at close to what they asked for in financial terms.
Please have a...
Excuse me, I sat here and didn't say a word.
Excuse me.
You can...
All right. All right.
Now, the fact of the matter is that
Wait, I stopped the clock. Let me just, is it okay through you, Mr. President, I make this statement? We're going to be civil here.
I am very civil.
Wait a minute. So just focus on here. There's no back and forth, and I'm going to ask the people in the audience, again, there's no conversation back and forth. We're here to listen to opinions, whether they're different or not. And this back and forth will not be tolerated.
Please go ahead.
So please continue.
Thank you, Trustee Davis, for it. Now, that agreement was reached. Both sides accepted it. And I have sat and watched and attended trustee meetings week after week to hear the same speakers make the same issue. I have a feeling if they would have put half the effort into raising their own funding that they've put into trying to browbeat the Board of Trustees, that they would have raised more than the amount of money they want from the Board of Trustees. As far as I'm concerned, this is purely a financial question. Can we as a community afford to give that kind of money to a nonprofit organization when our taxes are high and going to go up again this year? As far as I'm concerned, the answer is no. So I would urge you to stop allowing yourselves to be browbeaten by either side and to start considering what the arrangement that was agreed to last year was, what has happened since then, and why the discussion is not in those terms instead of this, what I think, highly inflammatory type of issue that's being raised. I'm fully aware of the history of this community on integration. I made a decision when I bought a house here 40 years ago that I was going to live here and I wasn't going to be driven away by an awful lot of race baiting that was going on by some of the real estate agents. So I've been through this. I've watched the CCR in general. I've supported a lot of what they've done. But I do not support any organization that brings racial overtones into their demand that my tax dollars being given to them. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'll make it really fast.
Your name for the record, please?
I'm sorry?
Your name?
Meredith Sue Willis. I'm a member of the South Orange Maplewood Community Coalition on Race, and I just wanted to browbeat you one more time because you've all been very patient, and I know you've got a lot more work to do tonight. I have two things I want to say. One is, Bill Calabrese referred to this, but I'm not sure people remember this. The Community Coalition on Race was created by the town of South Orange and the town of Maplewood. It was trustees, it was this body, with different human beings sitting there, but this body created the organization out of a need for making stable integration. This is not a group that came begging to you. You all made us. I was brought onto the coalition. I was invited on by Jonathan Rosenbluth. He invited me. It was the town who made us happen. That's one thing. That's enough, actually. I think I'll just stop there. We belong to you. You created us because you needed us, and we need the Community Coalition on Race because we want our town to be a place that is in favor of integration, that creates stable integration, and that's what the Community Coalition does. And I'm sorry to, beat your dear brows because I know you work hard, and we thank you for that, but we really, really need the money because we need you to stand behind stable integration in the United States of America, in New Jersey, in South Orange.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak at this time? Okay. Seeing as though there are no more members of the public who wish to speak, I'd like to close public comments and move on to our ordinances, which are on second reading this evening.
I just want to mention, this is on the agenda.
This is on the agenda, and the board will discuss it at our discussion section of the meeting later on.
That part tonight.
A little later. Okay. Our first ordinance on second reading tonight?
Yes, thank you. We have ordinance 2012-04.
If there's any conversation, just please take it out into the hallway or downstairs in the lobby. Thank you.
Thank you. This is an ordinance to require the retrofitting of existing storm drain inlets on private property and to provide for penalties for the violation thereof.
Thank you. This is basically just bringing our ordinances up to state code. I don't know if there's any more discussion the board wants to have on this, or if we have a motion.
Move. Public hearing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't think there is any money, but...
I think, yes, I'd be happy to open this for public comments at this point for this one ordinance in particular. Surprised, I thought this was the controversial item tonight. Seeing as there are no members of the public who wish to speak, I'd like to close this and ask for a motion.
I second.
Do we have a roll call vote, please?
Thank you. Trustee Bauer?
Yes.
Trustee Davis Ford?
Yes.
Trustee Goldberg?
Yes.
Trustee Levinson?
Yes.
And Trustee Rosner?
Yes.
Thank you. So ordinance 2012-04 did pass. We have a second ordinance tonight for public hearing and adoption. This is an ordinance to exceed the municipal budget appropriation limits to establish a cap bank. This is pursuant to NJSA Title 40A.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis, is there anything that you'd like to explain about this? I know we discussed it briefly our last meeting.
Well, unless anyone needs one, or I could re-explain it. It basically doesn't appropriate anything. As indicated, we are well below the appropriations cap and the tax levy cap. It just merely creates a bank for future years in the event you were to need it.
Thank you. I'd like to open up this ordinance for public discussion or comments. Seeing as there's no one who wishes to comment on this ordinance, I'd like to close public comments and ask for a motion.
I move.
I second.
Do we have a roll call vote, please?
Thank you. Trustee Bauer?
Yes.
Trustee Davis Ford?
Yes.
Trustee Goldberg?
Yes.
Trustee Levinson?
Yes.
And Trustee Rosner?
Yes.
Thank you. So ordinance 2012-05 has passed upon public hearing and is now adopted.
Thank you. And we have one ordinance on first reading this evening.
Thank you. This is ordinance 2012-08. This is an ordinance approving a draft, revised, and restated charter for the Township of South Orange Village and authorizing the submission of same to the New Jersey Legislature for enactment into law.
Thank you. There are a couple issues that I want to make sure we go over tonight during our board discussion. If we could have first a motion and a second.
I move.
Second.
Okay. There are a couple items. One is that I emailed the board earlier today. I don't know if people got a chance to see that before coming in tonight. I had a couple comments that regarding the language in two sections of the charter. One in section 2.1 municipal power and one in section 4.4 the powers and duties of the village president. And basically very small language changes. One of the things that we do that not all town councils or board of trustees do is advocate on larger issues, resolutions, for example, on marriage equality or opposing or supporting particular pieces of legislation. And this was language that I was asking. It's kind of half in the responsibilities of my responsibilities as village president. It's not really stated clearly in here for the governing body, but to formally give us the responsibility of also advocating on behalf of residents. So it's not just making municipal policy for South Orange residents, but it's also being a body that can advocate for our residents, to state, national, anything else. So the language in section 2.1 municipal power, I'll read this quickly. The governing body of the village shall be the Board of Trustees. It shall exercise all municipal powers except as otherwise specifically provided by this charter. The Board of Trustees shall function primarily as a legislative body devoted to policy and long-range planning, with the added language and advocacy for the welfare of its residents. In section 4.4...
Why don't we take one at a time, right?
Okay, sure.
My reaction is, I mean, I don't object. I mean, I think this makes sense, but it's more from a process standpoint. We've just talked about the charter so many times. The charter review committee reviewed it. I just think to be tweaking language, if we start doing this, we could really go through the entire charter and tweak all kinds of things. I don't know, I just don't know that it's a material change that's warranted at this late stage.
What was the downside?
I just think it opens up a huge can of worms. Do we really want to now revisit the entire charter and start looking at all?
I don't think so. I don't think this is asking to revisit the charter.
I just don't think this.
Even if we vote on it tonight, but we still want to send it to the members of the Charter Review Committee just to hear their thoughts on it. I mean, it seemed very innocuous and not anything serious, but I would still just like them to weigh in. I mean, I'll vote on it tonight anyway.
I agree with Trustee Rosner.
I would still like to send it to them.
And this is the opportunity, I think, to do those types of things. And your point, Trustee Goldberg, is well taken. We don't want to redo the whole thing. But this is the opportunity to, well, you should. I mean, this is huge. This is, the guideline of the law, of our type of government. And once we pass this, the trustees cannot make a change for, I believe it's for 10 years.
No more. They can change it next year if they want. They can't do it anymore. They're supposed to do it no later than every 12 years.
Okay.
12 years.
Oh, you can do it. You can do it.
You can do it every year, but you can't. Not
Great sounds
never review no later than 12 years.
Oh, I
No
see.
longer. That's
I misunderstood. Thank you for the
It's
clarification.
just the opposite of what you think.
Okay, all right.
And just to add a second piece to that, the second piece of language that's in the responsibilities of the village president, it does give this responsibility, although it's slightly unclear. Just to give some context for the first one, 4.4 is recommend to the Board of Trustees whatever action or programs he or she deems necessary or desirable for the village and the welfare of its residents. That second clause to me dictates that it's not just desirable for the village, our legal jurisdiction, but also just if it benefits our residents. So the language added was recommend to the Board of Trustees to external governments and other entities whatever actions or programs he or she deems necessary. That just makes it a little more clear that this is a responsibility that we have to our residents. I'd be happy to get their input on it.
Again, it doesn't appear to be a significant change, although I just looked at it for 3 seconds.
No, in fact, I don't believe it changes our authority at all. I mean, we already do these things.
Right.
But I think
And it is trying to clarify.
Yeah, we're a particularly proactive board. I think, not all boards may be that way, and I think it's important to make sure to put down, forthcoming that this is a requirement.
Well, you're not proposing it as a requirement, you're proposing it as a power that may be exercised.
But it exists.
I would oppose having the word advocacy in the charter. I don't know what advocacy means. I think it's a very broad word. It could mean everything from, lobby to educate. And it's one thing for us to memorialize what we think is our sentiment or public sentiment by sending a resolution to somebody on a bill or whatever. We do that regularly. But to advocate means, to me, to take a step further. And I know that there are restrictions. I've never really looked into them, but for instance, if there's a bond issue that I'm interested in for transportation or open space for DEP or something like that, everybody from the commissioner down to the lowly program officer cannot go out and advocate for that bill or bond issue or whatever it is. That's strictly prohibited, and there's Attorney General opinions on that. And again, that's one of the things we've been talking about all night, and that is we're listening to all night, and that is the proper use of taxpayer money. So I don't think a resolution, there's so little time and money associated with that. It's kind of in the de minimis category, transgresses anything. I'm sure there's some people that disagree with I'm sure there's somebody that disagrees with our Permanent Extension Act resolution tonight, but still, it seems to me to sort of fall into the de minimis category. But then to take that and advocate for it, clearly it seems to me to be taking other steps. And to me, it's just, I'd want to know what it meant, so I wouldn't vote for a word like advocate. I understand your sentiment, but...
Is there better, you think, a word that's more succinct, that's not, the word to advocate, but to really address support?
There may be, but since I read this afternoon, and we've been studying the charter for over a year, and I haven't had a chance to think about it or research it, I would, defer to some research to find out what those other cases and opinions are, and what, even though they're related to state agencies, how they relate to, lower forms of government, because after all, New Jersey is not a home rule state, although people like to say that. I am speaking into the microphone. This is as loud as it gets for me. New Jersey is not a home rule state. Municipalities are created by the state. The state can pull them back and pull back our zoning power and all the other powers that we have. We have delegated powers, and therefore it just seems logical to me that if the state has restraints like that, then counties and municipalities may too. So I would want to proceed very slowly and deliberatively and carefully in that regard, but I appreciate your sentiment. I often feel like we should be very strong advocates, and we should be marching on Trenton, and because we do get the short end of the stick, because we are municipalities of limited powers, and yet we're expected to do everything, provide all services, and do it within the cap. So
unfunded mandate.
I'd certainly be open to different wording changes, and actually this issue you brought up is pretty similar to one I discussed with Village Council earlier today. I don't know if Mr. Rother or either of you two have a comment on the use of that word, and I would imagine, as a side note, that if there was any legal issues with someone doing anything, whether it was in our charter or not, it wouldn't matter. It would still not be allowed. Although I do, and again, I'm open to changing, that word, but.
The only reaction that I personally have to that word as both a lobbyist, because I am a registered legislative agent, and as a lawyer for a lot of nonprofits, is I never allow them to use the word advocate. In there, it's very clear under the IRS. Of course, we're talking about nonprofits, which is different than a municipal corporation, which is a different kind of nonprofit, but not a corporation. That IRS regulations require nonprofits to be educational organizations and not advocacy organizations, because it's easy for them to slip over the line of lobbying, and then once you're lobbying, whether it's grassroots or direct lobbying, you have to track every dollar and so on and so forth. So, so I always say, because nonprofits always like to use the word advocate, and I never know where that falls, and because there are really only two boxes when you're talking to the IRS, I literally never allow them to use that word. You're either an educational organization and everything you have to do is educational, or you're going to lobby and you're going to check a 501H election, you're going to track it, you're going to do everything by the book, and that's perfectly fine and that's allowed, and you can keep your tax exempt status, but advocate, I don't know. So that, I'm just saying that's, you know, that's my own personal experience with that word all the time, and therefore that's one of the reasons I'd want to step back and figure out in the governmental context, what does all that mean?
I definitely understand the context. That's a good point.
Thank you.
From that context. I don't know. I don't know if anyone has any suggestions. I mean, I certainly don't want to hold the...
You had asked Stephen Barry.
I did. Do you guys have a suggestion of a word like advocacy that doesn't
A
contain...
synonym for advocacy?
Yeah. I just tried thesaurus.
Maybe we should table this so...
It didn't really work.
Why don't we table this so we have time to do it right, you know?
Well, do you want to, if we push this off one meeting, then we have the chance to ask the committee, and we can bring this back the next meeting. We could also pass it tonight on first reading and change it if we need to.
I'd rather table it.
Yeah, that would be material change.
We have discovered one other little tweak that is absolutely necessary to...
In this language or just in general?
No, just generally.
Oh, good.
Yeah, we have issues, so why don't we table it?
And what issue is that, Steve?
It's when the elected officials take office. When we put in the alternatives, we didn't correct when...
For the election date.
Subsequently, when you take office, because you would take office on one date. If it was a May election, you would take office on another date, if it was a November election. And so that little tweak has to be put in the document.
I thought I put that in there.
Pardon?
I thought I put that in there.
No, that followed in a subsequent paragraph.
The two alternates are in.
May I make a motion to table this?
Yes. Yes, you may.
I move to table.
Second.
Well, do you want to discuss what we had modified in the charter for the date of election?
It's simply that it leaves open, the document leaves open when the election might take place, and it gives the trustees the option by ordinance.
Excuse me, Counselor, we have a move in a second. Does that allow for discussion?
Trustee Davis Ford, that's okay. We can discuss on the second of a motion. That's fine.
We left open for the trustees by ordinance to change the election, either to November or May, as they choose over time.
Thank you.
Okay, so there was a motion and a second. If we can have a
This
voice.
is for tabling now?
Yeah, this is for tabling until the next meeting, which is when the budget's coming back. We had a motion and a second. If we just want to have a voice vote, all in favor of tabling this motion? A voice vote would require voicing the vote.
Call for ayes.
Well, why are we even voting on it?
To table it.
You have to do that.
Well, we haven't moved it on, have we?
We motioned and seconded it to consider it tonight.
Because if we make substantial changes, we're going to have to change.
This is to take it.
That's why you table it.
Yeah, this is to table. This isn't to pass it. This is to take it off for next meeting. That was what the motion and second was.
You're going to have to bring it back on to.
Do you want to ask who's in favor of tabling it?
I would love to.
Go ahead.
Who's in favor of tabling this?
Aye.
All right. Wasn't.
Nays.
Who's opposed? Okay. Great. Okay, so we will take that up again at our next meeting.
And I think it should just be made clear that in tabling it, we're actually continuing the public hearing to the May 14th. There will not have to be a republication. However, if there are substantive changes, then we may have to reintroduce a new ordinance at that time. If there are not, and we
Well, the public hearing wouldn't meet till second reading anyway.
No, that's correct. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And if I may, on a semi-related note, Steve, initially when we talked about these, there were two ordinances in parallel. One was to modify the charter and one was to move the election, and they were going to travel down parallel paths.
Yes. Yeah, and that's still the case. That's still.
But that one isn't on the agenda for tonight. Will we see that at the next meeting?
I don't control what goes on the agenda.
Fill out the form.
Where's that on the agenda?
I mean, is there a consensus that we should have that ordinance on the
Yes.
next meeting agenda?
Yes.
No.
Mr. President, would you put it on the agenda?
No, I don't agree with that.
If someone fills out the form, they can
But
do so.
you can put it on and nobody
I
has to
could,
fill
but
out a
I
form.
won't. I don't think we should move the election. I don't think we're ready to talk about it. I don't think we've done our due diligence.
Oh, I understand.
And I don't think we should try and rush these two things together.
Trustee Goldberg, you can put it on.
Anyway,
I avoid
Trustee
all
Rosner, could you reach out to the Charter Review Committee
Yeah.
and send them these language tidbits and see if they have any suggestions? Thank you.
Just one point, I think we made the change in the charter so that we're independent of when the election occurs. And we are now always have the choice of passing that ordinance if we want to or not.
Yeah, that's
But I think we should pass the charter first. That clarifies it.
I think we had said they were, correct me if I'm wrong, Council, I think you said they could go on parallel paths.
They could be. I don't take positions on
I'm not
how
suggesting
the
you do.
We're not legally
legislation should
prohibited
look.
from them
It
going
could be.
on.
I didn't say it should be.
Actually, you know
But
what
it
it is?
could.
We're very nervous about changing the election next year, but after that, we're okay with extending terms.
Okay, so we have a number of resolutions on our consent agenda this evening. Could the village clerk please read them by title?
Yes, thank you. We have a resolution appointing Brian Neeson as member of the Development Committee, resolution appointing Ken Blowman as a member of the Development Committee, a resolution appointing Michael Baldwin as a member of the South Orange Citizens Public Safety Committee, a resolution appointing Evan Lehrer as a member of the South Orange Citizens Public Safety Committee, a resolution authorizing the village president to sign the addendum to the recycling agreement with Green Sky Industries, formerly known as Cesaro Brothers, Inc., for the purchase of single-stream recycling commodities. We have a resolution awarding a contract to Ferrera Fire Apparatus Incorporated for the purchase of an aerial ladder truck and associated equipment in the amount not to exceed $735,787. There is a resolution authorizing the purchase of 3 Mark 2012 Dodge Charger police vehicles through state contract T-2776 to Charles S. Weiner, Inc., Carmen Dodge Contract A79009, in the amount not to exceed $98,357.07. There's a resolution authorizing the village president to sign an agreement with Public Service Electric and Gas Company for the application and granting of a license to the Township of South Orange Village to attach a surveillance camera to a PSE&G pole. We have a resolution establishing calendar year 2012 sewage usage charges, a resolution hiring baseball and softball umpires for the 2012 spring and summer season in the South Orange Department of Recreation and Cultural Affairs, a resolution hiring a per diem crossing guard in the South Orange Department of Public Safety, that's the police force, and a resolution opposing Assembly Bill 1338 and Senate Bill 743 to extend the expiration date of certain permits pursuant to the Permit Extension Act of 2008.
I got one question.
Thank you.
One comment. You want us to move it first? Or?
Yeah, if someone can make a motion in a second.
I move.
I'll second.
Okay.
And the one comment is on the fire truck, the price was slightly higher than originally. I just want to commend Chief Markey for reaching out and getting the grant up to cover that differential. So we're still responsible for the same amount. I didn't, you didn't have to come up and speak, but you can.
He was.
He pressed that better than you just did.
Excuse me, start the clock.
You have 3 minutes.
Yeah, 1 minute.
No, he found money for us, so he can speak for as long as he wants.
Just so everyone understands, what Trustee Rosner is speaking about, when we did receive the bids, we had initially received a AFG grant for $700,000. I took it upon myself to file an amendment to that grant to the AFG program, and last week we received word that the AFG would raise the amount of funding for the truck to the total price of the $735,800 some odd dollars, $700 some odd dollars. The share now has gone up. The federal share will be $698,997, and the village's share will be $36,789.
Great job.
It's a good ratio.
It's a wonderful ratio, isn't it?
Yeah, thank you.
Time's up. I yield my time to Alyssa.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
And the other question I have about the police cars, I know we discussed in finance, this price that's in here, these are fully loaded with all the lights, all equipment, anything? There's no extras, no resolution coming 2 weeks later with more for these things? Okay.
Well, I do have a follow-on question about that, because I didn't get an answer from my emails. Those cars...
Your 100 emails?
No, I don't have 100 emails. Are these cars, or the question was asked about being Hemi engines, are you satisfied that that's what's required for those cars?
Speak it to the mic, please.
The Trustee Levinson is referring to, we had received in their state contract pricing on 2 different models of the Dodge Charger. The resolution authorizes an amount not to exceed, which would include the Hemi engines. Still waiting on some information on the justification and necessity for that. There was some information provided to indicate that the Hemis actually have technology built into them that they scale down to 4-cylinder when they're at lower and idle RPM speeds, so that the actual mileage doesn't appear to be a differential. So I'm waiting on some additional information, but the amount is a not to exceed, so it would allow that if in consultation with Chief Shalell, the decision's made that we can get with the other ones, we'll go that route.
But the differential is about $2,000 a car?
Correct.
Thank you.
Yep.
Just a quick question on Resolution 09 about putting yes, I just want to know where the location is.
I don't think we want to say it.
Yeah,
Oh.
I can't really.
Okay.
Sorry.
You'll whisper to me later?
It's in the paperwork, Robin gave.
Okay.
I actually have 2 questions and a comment also. 2012-091, the sewer user charge, that's the same rate as last year, is that correct? It is not increasing?
Right.
So in years past, you talked about going, it's the same as last year?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And 2012-094, that resolution opposing that bill, Howard, I think you had made that request. Can you or someone sort of explain briefly what this is? I don't think I have an objection to it, I just like to better understand
It is supporting the League of Municipalities as well in opposition to this bill, which extends permits into areas that are protected areas, in essence, where our water supply comes from. These permits allow extending the building permits in those areas. And
Yeah, and to echo what the proposal here, there was previously adopted legislation called the Permit Extension Act that in light of the economic climate, there was a belief that developers who had invested money and obtained certain land use permits and approvals, that there wasn't adequate time and they didn't want to lose that, so extended in the current act, extends it through the end of 2013. This proposed legislation would add even additional time, and the concern, I think, on the village's standpoint and the League of Municipalities as well, is that now you could be looking at 10 years out, and local conditions may have changed, the need for the project, your zoning requirements, and so this actually opposes that legislation.
this bypasses the local zoning boards as well.
Well, because it extends, it just continues the lifespan of existing permits that have already now potentially gone, will have a full 6 years versus the statutory 2 years, and you're entitled to get extensions, but they've already been extended to a 6-year lifespan, and quite frankly, they were any permit that had not expired by January 1, 2007, so they could have gone back to 04 and 05 even, so you could be right now looking at 9 and 10-year-old permits that would be even extended further.
And one last question. I see that there's no resolution for an executive session this evening. We're not doing an executive session after this meeting?
No.
That's correct.
I had asked for 2 items.
I know Mark asked for one too. Code enforcement.
Robin?
I have to defer to President Torpy on that
Yeah,
question.
there was nothing, when we discussed it, there was nothing that we had to add to discuss tonight. We had a couple legal issues, some that happened today, but none of them required board discussion. Is there something that is of a time sensitivity that if we discuss it 2 weeks from now, will somehow face some sort of consequence?
Not necessarily, but it's part of the process that, you have been insisting on us filling out these forms for placing items on the agenda, which we have done. And I'm surprised it's not on the session.
I don't know, the packet went out on Friday, so I would expect something to get caught at that point, but, I mean, again, if you absolutely feel that as though it's necessary to discuss tonight, we can.
Well, one of the items Steve has already made a comment to all of us.
All right, we're digressing. Can we just?
And I can discuss with you afterwards about what that is.
Don't we have a mover in a second, Mr. President?
Yeah, was there any other discussion on the consent agenda?
I sent one on the construction department code enforcement.
I can't hear you.
It's a closed session item, you don't have to hear it. And that was the one, but I sent it by email last Monday. Last Monday. And I mean, I cannot wait 2 weeks, I can wait.
Just to be clear, it'll be 3 weeks.
Okay.
There's a fifth Monday in April.
Right.
Just in case anybody's counting 2 weeks versus 3.
Okay. Well, we can make sure to add both of those for the next meeting. So there was a motion and a second. If we could have a roll call vote on this consent agenda, please.
Thank you. Trustee Bauer?
Yes.
Trustee Davis Ford?
Yes.
Trustee Goldberg?
Yes.
Trustee Levinson?
Yes.
And Trustee Rosner?
Yes.
Thank you. So the consent agenda passed on a roll call vote.
Thank you. Approval of bills?
Yeah. I move that the bills list audited by the village treasurer and that each member of the Board of Trustees has been provided a copy of be accepted.
I move.
I moved it.
I second.
We have a roll call vote, please.
Thank you. Trustee Bauer?
Yes.
Trustee Davis Ford?
Yes.
Trustee Goldberg?
Yes.
Trustee Levinson?
Yes.
And Trustee Rosner?
Yes.
Thank you. The April 16th bills list has been approved.
Thank you. At this point, I'd like to open the meeting up for our second public comment section. We've had a number of speakers tonight, so if there are people who do want to speak, I ask that you keep your comments to 2 minutes. That's all. Okay. Sure.
Leslie Pagani, I'll make it brief. I did hear someone say that the CCR is political and or has made political statements. Main Street is political. Both of them are political. At times you may agree or you may disagree, but if you can fund one, you should be able to fund the other. And YouthNet. But that's my opinion as a taxpayer in this town.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak at this time? Seeing as there are no more people who wish to speak, I'd like to close public comments and move to our reports. The first is the village president's report. So I have a couple very quick things. One is that I attended a panel in Philadelphia last week at the National Constitution Center. Talking about social media and democracy, and I'm trying to work up a couple of these different things. I've gone to a few lately, and we're looking at some new IT strategies and softwares and things, some of which actually the administrator, the clerk, and myself are starting to use now. That's online, basically knowledge building software, so that instead of everything being in an email, we can try and collect databases of information, for example, on long-term projects. And then easily find those so that all the trustees have more information, then we can give more information to the public. So just a report, I actually met a few people there with some very interesting ideas. And there was a memo outstanding that I owe to the board regarding the agenda changes that we had discussed last meeting. So it's not something that's fallen off my radar, but something I just haven't had time to put together yet. One other thing is that our community emergency response team had their last class this weekend, and from what I understand, had a fun time doing their training exercise at Seton Hall. And I just want to make sure to thank Seton Hall. They've been extremely gracious in allowing us to use their space, also overseeing the class, and it's a really great value as we build this program that prepares people for what to do in an emergency. We had 2 trustees who were also in the class who had a lot of fun. Hopefully everybody else will join in. It's getting rave reviews from what I understand.
Yeah, but of the 2 trustees, only one of us is going to get a certificate.
Oh. Uh-oh.
You had a better attendance record.
Which one would that be?
I'm just not going to name any names.
But I just wanted to make sure to thank Seton Hall and thank people who signed up for that. And also, we'll be doing more of those classes in the future. A couple residents have taken on the role for coordinating the CERT program, which is something that I was doing previously, although it's still under my auspices as the OEM coordinator. But we're looking forward to more of those classes. One last thing, which I've mentioned to a couple trustees in passing, which is I think it might be a nice idea. We had kind of a priority and goal setting sessions, a few last year, and I think that might be kind of a fun thing to do again, to get kind of off campus, so to speak, although usually to get off campus, we go on campus at Seton Hall, and to kind of get together.
Mr. President, if you'd like, I'll take up that task and, look at a location and come up.
Yeah, let's coordinate on that. It's still kind of in the early planning stages, but a chance for us to get together, go over some of the things that we think are going well, think are not going well, things that we need to improve, build our personal relationships, and kind of look at what's coming up for the next year. Mr. Lewis?
Okay. One reminder, and I guess for the public as well, and we touched upon it a little bit with the one resolution, the single stream will be starting in the near future. We'll have an introductory article in the Gaslight and on the website, and then we hope in the next week or two we're putting together a whole separate mailing with all the details and dates and rules and what you can and can't put in, but pretty excited about it. I think it's going to be really a good enhanced service for the residents. The budget's all been transmitted down to Trenton. We are regrettably not in a self-examination year. Every 3 years you cycle through where you do not do a local self-exam. So it's our turn down in Trenton. So I'll be kind of writing them to hopefully push them along in their review. I did send out a memo kind of summarizing a meeting last Friday on the redevelopment committee with a recommendation from the committee that we move forward with a conditional designation of a redeveloper. So in the absence of any objection, we'd move forward with having our redevelopment council prepare the necessary paperwork for the next meeting to make that conditional designation, which is important because then there's a sort of a fee shifting where they begin to bear the expenses. The Red Flex company on the stoplight has provided a form of contract that they've utilized, so we'll be working with Mr. Rother to sort through that. It's a little convoluted, there's some issues, but we'll get that and hopefully be in a position at the next meeting to have something on for approval. Village Hall's on for a later specific item. I would also echo, and I had a note here, and so I'll just join in congratulating and really commending Chief Markey for his efforts. Basically, the original project and grant was based on a $700,000 purchase with a 95% grant, so we were looking at a grant of $65 and we were going to pay $35, and when the bid came in over at $735, I was preparing for and looking at that we were going to pay $70, and the chief really through his own efforts and his diligence and chutzpah and going back to the source and asking for more money, which I commend him on, that they didn't throw him out, and he got the money, and so now we're only having to pay 5% of that additional $35,000, so that's $33,000, $34,000 savings to the village, so I would join in congratulating the chief. Mr. Rother's office is coordinating, and we will in the relatively near future be having the closing on the West 3rd Street property in conjunction with the river.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
The West 3rd Street, 41 West 3rd Street acquisition for the river project, that closing will be in the 4th. On the 4th of May. And those were the only issues I had.
And Barry, maybe you want to also share, as follow-ups to prior meetings, things we've talked about. There is the update about the reassessment is on the website now,
yeah, that's correct.
Including a calculator.
Correct. Yeah, there is. We did, and there had been some questions raised at an earlier budget workshop, and the reassessment process can be somewhat confusing in trying to figure out, okay, I have a new value, but what does this mean? And in order to provide a tool to make that simple, we do have on the website now, there's a page that says reassessment impact. If you pick on that, there is a link in there. You can open an Excel spreadsheet. The formulas are all locked, so there's only 2 boxes you need to fill in. One is your 2011 assessed value, one is your new 2012 assessed value, and it will then automatically calculate what your
new taxes will be.
Well, not your 2012 taxes, and that's important because it does not take into account this year's budget, or because you want to compare apples to apples. So we'll show you what your 2011 taxes would have been under your old value and your new value. We've
prorated the tax rate. So it gives you a direct apples-to-apples comparison of what the impact of just the reassessment standing alone would be, not taking into account any budgetary increases either on the municipal end or the school or the county. Now, the calculator is limited solely to the municipal portion of the budget because that's the rate that we know and we can exactly project. To try and go back and figure out what the county or the school would have been because our share of those sort of joint budgets would change as our assessed value lowered, it's not really conducive to that. But I think using the tool will give you a real good example, and it's fairly self-explanatory, the instructions that if you're up or down, what that means. And it's a double-edged sword. If you do the calculator and it looks like your taxes would have been less under your new value, the good news is your taxes would have been less. The bad news is that your house lost more value than most. So it's a double-edged sword, but I think it kind of in a very simple format, allows residents to understand the impact.
That's great.
Yeah, and thank you very much for doing that. It was tremendous and very clear. I appreciate it. And the other thing was the water that we brought up a number of times. And the water test results are now posted to the website.
Correct,
as
right.
well.
On our water page, we do now, and we'll be updating the village. Not only do we get the results from East Orange Water Commission's water testing, but the village has commissioned our own independent testing twice a month to supplement the once a month cycle from East Orange Water, and all those results are now on the website and will be updated as we receive those results. And
cool.
As of now, we're good and we're within the acceptable limits, so that's the good news. And certainly if any of the results come in, we won't just rely on putting it on the website. We will take all the appropriate steps to notify the residents.
Then there's one more thing on the website too, which is the budget in various formats, which is the first time we've done that.
We, on our budget page, information page, there is a PDF of the full state form budget, which is a fairly cumbersome document. There is also a condensed version, which is a spreadsheet that I prepare that tracks in exact line item order the state form of the budget, but condenses it down to 6 pages, and it does also show last year's budget and the percentage increase. And we've also put that online as an Excel spreadsheet. I've locked all the formulas, but any interested resident that wants to open an Excel, you can, for whatever intellectual exercise you want to do, change amounts of appropriations and see what the effect on the budget would be. Again, the formulas are locked, so you can't go in and change that. But it's, again, I think could be a useful tool for those that are interested in seeing what the impact, and if you wonder, well, if we didn't spend this, and we took that out, what would the tax increase? And it kind of projects out, and it will at the very bottom of that spreadsheet tell you what the average assessed homeowners, the tax impact would be. So
That's good stuff, Barry. Good stuff.
anything else? I thought it was done.
Okay, finance and IT?
Yeah, only one comment. I received an email from our CFO today indicating that he had resolved an issue that we had with our accounting system, and that hopefully by next week we will have our accounting reports for the Finance Committee meeting.
Legal Committee?
We did not meet since our meeting 2 weeks ago. We're scheduled to meet in, I think, 3 weeks, and we have a robust agenda. We have a lot of things that are important to discuss, and so I will leave it at that.
Planning and Zoning?
Planning and Zoning Committee, we actually had 2 meetings in one night. The second one was going over the Historic Commission proposed ordinance. There were 4 of us there, Trustee Gould, Goldberg, Gower, myself. We came to a recommendation, which the final draft of the ordinance is not ready yet, but we'd like to recommend that everyone read it when it's sent out, and to review with the next meeting, and then vote on it thereafter if everyone agrees or not. The basic of the ordinance is that it'll be a historic commission, and that will have that will deal with the set in historic zones, and will help delay or prevent demolitions in historic districts or historic houses. And subdivisions. Those are the 2 major issues that we're looking to prevent from happening in any of our historic areas, or even in some non-historic areas. But this will protect the historic areas and the historic buildings. Do you know when that draft will be ready, Steve?
My secretary is working on it today to do the
okay, so in a few days. All right, so we should have it by the end of the week. Third Valley, we got the update on already. Fairview Avenue, Sal's working on the final plans, but he's waiting for PSE&G to get back to him with for the street, for the
final plans
yeah,
where the
for the
where
final
the
plans
electric
for the
lights-
street, for where the electric lights will go. He expects to have that within 30 days, but there's no guarantee with PSE&G. And I think that
And Mark, I'm sorry, on that topic, I don't know if you were going on to another topic. I spoke to some of the residents that live there, and they would like to maybe take a portion of the next planning and zoning meeting to understand, once we get the plans back from PSE&G, they've agreed, we're not revisiting bump outs, we're not revisiting speed humps, they just want to understand the whole cumulative plan. It's not about discussion and debate, it's about just understanding it as it goes forward.
Okay. We also went over the old stone house about meeting with, and Sal had met with the surveyor and had a draft survey. And there's some issues about the street dedication of how the access to the house would go. And I know the email update that we got was slightly different than the final discussion that we had a couple of years ago of how it would work. One calls for going through the police parking lot, and the other called going for the senior citizen parking lot. And I thought we had agreed on the senior citizen parking lot, but there's evidently, other discussions, but there were problems with the police. I know we have to settle that, but it doesn't stop us from going ahead with the next steps on the old stone house once we get the survey done of seeing how to sell it, the building, if there's an interest on it, with the restrictions on the deed. I think that was it.
The bill before the Senate, do you want to talk about that at the next meeting?
Yeah, let's talk about it at next meeting. We should have more information back. I'm just waiting for the Senator Cody's office to get back to us. We'll put it on the agenda for next meeting and talk about it, but I'll share it with you by email before then. Okay? Thank you.
Public safety. There was a number of issues we discussed. There was a resident that had brought up an issue about some traffic issues around South Mountain Annex, so the police department are going to conduct a traffic survey around there to see what was necessary and perhaps install additional signage and see what other measures are necessary. We talked about the ladder truck, which has now been approved this evening. There was some discussion about, apparently on our village website, it talks about under recycling, it says you can bring recyclables to the firehouse, or it says you can bring to the firehouse once the construction is complete. So I brought it to the attention of the chief and realized clearly the language is ancient. Construction is complete, but do we do recycling at the firehouse? And it was news to me that actually they did. They did use the
Yeah, we used to have a big bin with cans.
And it would go for the benefit of St. Barnabas Burn Center. Apparently they're working out some logistics now. They don't really do it, have the facilities at the firehouse, but they may be setting aside some separate area at the recycle center to do this. So it's an ongoing conversation. It's still up in the air, but that's still out there being discussed. We talked about the summer patrols downtown. Obviously, there's some residents that talked about some issues that happened the other night, and obviously the foot patrols, and we're going to resume, and obviously the downtown after sundown concerts will be resuming as well shortly now that warm weather is upon us.
Or warm weather comes back.
Right, or it comes back. One thing we did last year for the first time was the police department recognition ceremony in the month of May, and we'd like to continue that as an annual process. So what we're going to do is we'd like to do in October as fire department recognition, and in May as police department recognition. So the chief has a few people he would like recommended. We'll talk about it at the next public safety meeting, which is scheduled for next Tuesday, May 1st, and ideally put it on the agenda for our first meeting in May, the 14th.
If I can add one quick thing to that too, I know when we did a couple proclamations, I guess, for 2 outgoing members of the rescue squad, we thought it might be a nice thing to also do a rescue squad recognition ceremony, all 3 of our public safety branches. So I don't know, maybe next time that's discussed in the public safety committee, if someone wants to reach out to the rescue squad, I'm sure they'd be happy to be part of that. It's certainly worth recognizing their volunteer efforts as well.
There was some discussion, again, a resident had, not myself, had requested speed humps on Mayhew and Harding. A traffic study was done on Mayhew, which said they were warranted. The study was not yet completed on Harding, so that study is underway to see if they're warranted on the parallel streets. We talked about the red light cameras, which has since been talked about here. Best practices study is underway, and I will talk about that further at the next public safety meeting. The vacant court space, we talked about this at public safety, and I was under the impression that the detective bureau was going to be moving upstairs to the court space, but I heard recently, sort of through the grapevine, that that is not the case. Do you know anything about that, Barry?
No, it's my understanding that the detective bureau is moving upstairs.
Okay.
Now, when we say the court space, they were moving into what were the court administrative offices and not the courtroom, but it's part of the quote court space.
Okay.
Maybe that's the confusion.
Maybe.
The courtroom tentatively for now is for the parking authority during the interim.
I thought they were going in the violations bureau.
No, they wound up actually, the
No, they
DB
switched.
preferred, they wound up switching at the request of the detective bureau, and the parking authority preferred it as well. They both preferred the opposite space.
Okay, as long as the detective bureau is moving upstairs, because I know that was a
They
very
are.
sore subject, and
They
being
actually
the-
said it
being
at the
basement.
tour.
I'm sorry?
They did say that at the tour, what Barry just said, but they just,
Yeah. And then lastly, Citizen Public Safety Committee gave an update on the CERT team, which we already spoke about earlier. So congratulations to all the recent graduates of the new CERT team.
Me, not you.
Touche. Thank you. That is all.
and the issue that was brought up tonight, will that be on the next agenda? Or?
We certainly can. Obviously, if it's not resolved, I mean, I would think you'd want to talk to the chief directly and see what transpired there, but we can certainly add it to the agenda if they want to come and speak about it next Tuesday.
I think that'd be good.
Public Works?
Public Works is, well, the engineer's office is very busy with the number of projects that are going to construction right now, but I'll let Sal report on them at the next meeting. I do want to clarify that the 3rd Street property acquisition actually had nothing to do with the river project. And since it's going to be capped, it's not going to be anything green, so we shouldn't really think of it as part of the river project. That was one of the 10 or so acquisitions that was proposed by the Open Space Advisory Board back in 2007 or 8, and really had not even any correspondence or coordination with the river project. But since it's being acquired, we will probably try to use the space if we can strike a deal with the Muse for their egress travel lane from their guest parking lot, which is now being used by the parking authority anyway, for a separate bike lane. I want to confirm that the DPW is going to meet on the 4th Wednesday of the month, because I thought we had agreed upon that, and I just want to make sure everybody did. I know Trustee Levinson had a conflict for this month, but are you planning on the 4th Wednesday of every month at this point? Because we have agreement from Tommy and Sal, and that was difficult to work out.
No, it's okay with the 4th Wednesday.
Okay, good, all right.
Just this week,
So
just this
we
week
have,
is not-
yeah, so
Yeah.
unfortunately,
I don't know the schedule.
this Wednesday is the only Wednesday that the consultant for the river project has to have a meeting. So I apologize, I had to cancel the meeting, and we'll just reschedule by email. It'll be difficult, as it always has been, but it'll go back to the 4th Wednesday. And other than that, really, we're just looking forward to single stream recycling coming aboard, and that's pretty much it.
Trustee Gould's not here to do the Recreation and Cultural Affairs. Is anybody else in that meeting able to report on that? If not, we can just wait till
We can
next
wait.
time.
Kate Schmidt was there.
But she's not here.
Not here.
I couldn't make it, I had a last minute, I got there late, too late for it.
All right, well, we'll have her report on that in our next meeting. We do have a number of discussion items tonight. I just want to encourage the board to try and, for these items, get to,
See this before.
we can take quick status reports on a couple things, and then if there's anything that we need to discuss and figure out what to take a next step on, to do so. The first is a status report on the Old Stone House, which we just spoke about for a minute. I don't know if you have more, Trustee Levison?
Yeah, I still would like to understand what the plan is from a timing perspective. This has been going on for 5 years, and each each time we kick the can a little further down the road. 5 years ago, we put a temporary roof on the old stone house that would last for 5 years, and it's getting down to the point where and it becomes a financial issue if something happens to that temporary roof.
It's like Groundhog Day with this issue.
But still, we've passed a number of the milestones that we had established for the project, and I'd just like to know where we're going with it. And I think Mark has spoken to some of it, but the next steps are now to bring it to bid or to
Market.
to market.
As soon as the survey comes back.
I thought it was independent of the survey, that in fact they could bid on it and we would fix it.
No, here's, if I can just give you the history, as I've been involved in it. It took a bit of a turn while Doug Newman was president. And the notion was to put as much of the project in place without the expenditure of funds, and to make certain actions conditioned upon the subsequent sale, so that we weren't committing to the dollars, for instance, on the subdivision until we knew that we had a sale. So some of the things that had to be done were to have at least a meets and bounds description of the project that was being offered for sale, and that involved the survey that was performed. And that also necessitated some understanding of what the access to the site was going to be. And initially, and here's where I think there's some confusion in terms of the email traffic we saw this past week. The access was supposed to be over the senior citizen project to the north of the retention basin. That would have left a relatively narrow one cartway traffic going into the site and essentially creating a flag lot. It also would have necessitated some rather expensive retention wall put into the retention pond, so that 10-foot wide drive would not slide into the retention pond. The alternative that was looked at was to dedicate the drive that goes into the police parking lot as a public street, so as to give the site actual frontage on a dedicated street. And I think that's where
I think that was
confusion came.
No, I think the confusion's still there, because the third option was to use the driveway for the senior citizen home and get an easement from them to have it go down to the end and then hook into the old stone house site. Therefore we wouldn't have to do the retention walls, and we wouldn't have to use the police station property.
Okay.
Because there was a real issue with the police property, and it still has the same questions, and we're gonna figure out a way to make up for the lost parking.
I never heard of that version.
Well, that was the last version that I had left with when I thought we were going. I don't know if anyone else remembers that one, but.
The only comment I would make on that version is you then have a non-conforming lot. It has no frontage.
I think we pretty much have a non-conforming lot now anyway.
Well, it fronts on Grove Road.
We're just gonna go from one non-conforming.
It's part of a larger lot. It's part of a larger lot.
But it's still non-conforming.
I have a question. What committee is this coming out of? Is there,
Well, we used to have an old stone house committee, but this
Right.
came out of the planning and zoning committee, because that's where it was asked.
Okay. Mark's
trying to
But
punt
I'm
it to
perfectly
Public
happy to
Works.
put it on legal committee. It doesn't.
We'll
If that's what you want, if you want ownership of this, take it.
Deborah, edit, comment. My suggestion would be is to put it back to whatever appropriate committee and iron these out. I don't think we can do that here.
Well, go ahead, tell us which committee that is. That's a-
Yours.
Planning and zoning.
I'll be happy to take it. I'm
Okay,
happy to
great.
take it.
So what
Okay.
it means.
Status report on Village Hall renovation.
Okay, Mr. Renda, our engineer, Mr. Rother, myself, an associate from Mr. Rother's office, all participated in a conference call together with the architect. The specific initial issue was the construction manager contract. The construction manager to whom we made the award had proposed to use a standard form utilized by his association. After reviewing the whole thing, the fact that we're using AIA documents throughout with our architect, we've opted to utilize the AIA document for construction manager services. We've notified the construction manager. Sal actually sent him an email, and we're waiting to see whether he has any issues. We're certain that he's had experience with it. Mr. Rother's office will be, our architect is very comfortable with that document, and I don't think had any proposed changes. So Mr. Rother's office will just be reviewing it to protect the village. As soon as we get that finalized, we'll get that signed up. The architect is moving forward on the design work and preparation of the plans and specifications. As was alluded to in some earlier emails, those plans and specifications will include an option or a provision for the contractor to provide and bear all the expense of the trailers, which will be bid as a separate line item with, as an alternate, if you will. So that's moving full speed ahead. In the interim, an opportunity has arisen to possibly explore another interim location, which we're looking at. It has, again, at this point, we've not committed and will not commit any money towards investigating anything, but we'll look at that. The other one is moving full speed ahead on its path. Hopefully within the time period, by the time he finishes the specs that goes out to bid, there's plenty ample period of time to see whether this or any other opportunities present himself, and then that would give us an opportunity to weigh some options when we get a cost in. Right now we have an estimate of what the trailers will cost, but until we actually have a hard number, we don't really know what they'll cost. So basically it's moving along. I think we're still on pace with the architect to complete his work, and with the expectation that we can go out to bid, receive bids in the summer, and make an award, and we're still targeting September for the move-out date.
Just as a guesstimate, because when you do these type of things, it always takes longer than you approve, but if everything begins in September as you targeted the move-out date and for everything to begin here, what's the guesstimate time on the total completion?
They said 2 years is what we
October.
Yeah, I think we're conservative. I think it's a fairly conservative. Ideally, in a perfect world, it would be something less, 18 to 20 months, but recognizing there's contingencies, we're operating on a 2-year, 24-month timeline.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so, October 2014.
Email communication and disclaimer policy. It's from the legal committee.
Yeah, we have had several discussions regarding the need to have a policy in place where there's a disclaimer, and our counsel, Steve, was looking at some examples for us to choose. But basically, we are looking to have a disclaimer on all emails that go out. In addition,
I mean, like in the footer, like you've seen a lot of corporate mail, that
yes.
type of thing?
Yes, at the bottom of each email. And also what we're looking at as a tie-in to this is having a policy in place crafted about the use of residents' emails in our database that would be solely regarding village business. So we're looking at those things that tie into the email disclaimers. Steve, do you have anything you want to add to that?
On email policy generally, we Trustee Bauer and I were going to meet, and we're going to try and get that done one morning.
Yeah.
Early.
And thank you, Trustee Bauer. I think you're the most qualified person to work with our council in that area.
Okay. That's true. On-street parking along Montague, Trustee Rosner.
I didn't put this on here, so I don't know. If there was an email complaint or a question, I didn't receive it.
I was surprised, because actually this came through public safety, I think, and some resident contacted me. I didn't ask to be put on the agenda. Basically, there's a number of students that have moved into a house that are parking on both sides of the street that are causing some traffic issues, that basically they're just going to talk to them and ask them not to do that.
Okay.
As a first step before we take any further action. So let's take the simple approach first. So no further discussion is needed.
I assume the parking authority has been involved in that discussion?
Police department.
Okay. Okay. Okay, now we have 2/3 items that are similar, which is 2 service level agreements, one for YouthNet, one for the Community Coalition on Race, and the third, a request for funding from the Rescue Squad. Could the administrator, actually, before you do that, Trustee Rosner, you made a point last meeting that I may have a conflict of interest regarding any discussions with the rescue squad. I did take that pretty seriously, and I did ask village council to look into that and give me an opinion whether I need to recuse myself from the discussion. So if you just want to give the opinion.
Yeah, a preliminary look at the law indicates, and we're finalizing a written opinion on this, is that because of the voluntary nature, volunteer status of the position that village president has taken, 2, the essential governmental service that's involved, and 3, the statutes that provide for contribution from municipalities to things like volunteer rescue squads and fire departments, would indicate that he would not have to recuse himself.
Thank you. I'm obviously willing to step back from the discussion if I need to, but it doesn't appear that's necessary.
We should shortly be filing a full written opinion on that.
Thank you.
Can I suggest that we discuss that one first?
No, because in consideration for the people here, and let's, you know.
People here from all 3 organizations.
Yeah, they're all here. I mean, that's the shortest of them.
Oh, I see. Okay. I didn't realize the third was here.
Yeah,
Sorry.
if you'd like to do that.
Sorry, Trustee Levinson.
That's fine.
What's the total amount in the budget on these 3, by the way?
Well,
what's the line item that you have put away?
They're all in one large line items.
And what's the total?
$320,000 in that line.
How much?
$320,000, but it covers a variety of professional services, master plans, some other issues. I mean, it's in a larger pot. But,
how much is still left in that pot?
If
you just say 0, it ends the conversation.
Yeah, then I don't get out of here alive. The discussion was to do the rescue squad first? Was that?
Yeah, that's fine with everybody else.
Well, I had asked by email if we could get some accounting information about how much money we currently give the rescue squad in both supplying oxygen, property itself, fueling, gas, and a car. Those are some of the things.
And the pension stipends.
And the pension stipends. Those are some of the things that we do currently have as a contribution to the rescue squad. They are asking for additional monies, but the other thing that I had asked for were the number of runs that we were making to Maplewood.
We did get that.
Yes, we're having something like 150.
I think you should clarify why we make runs to Maplewood, besides how many.
Can you give me a chance?
What?
Give me a chance?
Yeah.
You separate you 2?
It's the 10 o'clock, I like to move it on.
Past your bedtime?
Yes.
We currently have a mutual aid agreement with the towns around us. If Maplewood needs additional services for rescue squad, they currently provide their ambulance service through their fire department. They are a billing source. They bill out for their services. If there's a mutual aid call for an ambulance in Maplewood and the fire department is out, our rescue squad will respond to that call, as well as other townships. But we have about 150 calls a year to Maplewood, and I think one of the suggestions is that we should look to Maplewood for some sort of stipend or some sort of participation in the cost of running our rescue squad.
You want to pony up?
Well, I've already spoken to one,
Sorry, little inside joke.
One of the council people about ponying up. If you look at the cost for a run that a commercial ambulance company would charge us between $700 and $750 a run, that's a fairly lot of money that we are providing to Maplewood, and I think they should provide some sort of stipend or donation to our rescue squad in supporting it. We are in need of a new ambulance. I think that's coming up shortly, and this money is part of that support. So one part of it is to go back to Maplewood and see if we can ask for some of their contribution. Additionally, I'd just like to put together the total amount of money that we are contributing to the rescue squad in terms of real dollars. I don't object to doing it, but I think we should understand what the total contribution is.
Yeah, Howard, similar, I also don't necessarily object. The one, and I sent an email to Ken. Is Ken in the room? I don't even know.
No.
Okay, I don't know what he looks like. Ken had sent us an email with their proposed service level agreement, and Don, thank you for being here. The one thing I would be helpful to understand is the financials of the rescue squad. What is the budget? What is the balance sheet? What is the income statement? We simply got a request with some statistics, but not a whole lot of financials, basically saying, and again, all due respect, there wasn't a whole lot of supporting information. If you're coming to a bank or you're coming to a funder to ask for money, it'd be very helpful to have a justification for what the deficit is, what the money's going for, what the revenue is, those types of things. So that would be helpful information to make an informed decision.
He has to talk at the mic.
Yeah, if you want to talk, come to the mic, although I would ask a question to the board, as far as contracting for services, which is what this is, I'm not sure I'm not sure how how necessary that kind of information really is. I mean, if we were going to a company to provide ambulance services, I don't think you get that same level of financial analysis.
I think the difference is this is a volunteer group, and if they're sitting there with a pot of money, I'm not suggesting that you are, but if they were sitting there with a large pot of money, holding it back for something, then they don't really need the money, and this is looking in anticipation. We just want the justification on the financial
The
side.
statute requires it.
Okay. And
A basic amount of budget information?
The statute speaks to financial information.
I think it's.
So they'll provide whatever the statute requires.
And Alex, just to be fair, I think up to about, 5 or 6 years ago, at least on 2 occasions, they did give us their annual budget and finances. And at that time, they weren't showing any shortfall to us. So, so it's not like this did come as somewhat of a surprise, and I don't really mind if they need, I think it was $10,000 is the request. And I don't think it's unreasonable, to make sure we have this service provided to the town. Although I agree with Howie that we should talk to Maplewood and that they should really more than just pony up.
Well, let me also clarify and add to that Mayor DeLuca did reach out to me to talk about our EMS services, because their first aid squad is kind of in flux right now in Maplewood. So that's a meeting that is supposed to be forthcoming between South Orange and Maplewood.
So it's a shared services opportunity in essence.
Well, it's
with some sort
one
of
is volunteer and the other one is a paid.
Well, no, this would be between the Maplewood First Aid. The discussion was Maplewood First Aid and South.
And there's municipal aid issues, but this is more just, we would be asking them just as a donation, a voluntary thing, not a local agreement.
Okay.
But I do think that, I don't think there's any real objection to coming up with, up to $10,000 from most people. It's obviously a good service and it saves the residents money. And we want the rescue squad, and we want to make sure there's always an ambulance in South Orange that can respond to emergency calls. I don't think anybody questions that.
Wait, let me add one thing to what Trustee Levison said too, as far as the cost of this. It's just important to note, and we dove into a lot of this stuff when we were looking at fire department issues, is that an organization like this that uses volunteers and also doesn't bill saves money twice. Because one, taxpayers aren't paying to staff the EMTs, and 2, they're not getting billed when they actually use the service. So paid organizations do both, cost both. And we have an arrangement with a private company during the day where we don't pay for their service, but they do bill people. But volunteer EMS agencies don't do either. So it's a pretty good deal.
So what's our actionable?
Well, sorry, one more question, Deborah, I apologize. One other thing I'd like to understand is, again, is this a one-time infusion to help them through a tough time, or is this now going to be in perpetuity? And something we should understand, again, based on their financials.
Well, there was something else that I wanted to ask. We used to have a golf tournament that helped sponsor or bring in some monies into the rescue squad, and for the last 2 years we haven't had that. Is that 4 years?
Can I ask Sheena Pullum to come up to the mic regarding that? Yeah, because aren't you working on that?
You can, although I think the bottom line is pretty short, which is Chair of the Citizen Public Safety Committee has been thinking about trying to reorganize that as a fundraising event. I mean, I know you could have said it better, but...
Yes, she could have. But it's your prerogative, Mr. President, to do what you just have done.
Thank you. So that's being looked into as well.
But I think to answer, Michael's question, the way I understand it is, when I saw it, that this is probably going to be an annual need for shortfall unless people start donating more money. But I think that I think every year we have to look at it, based on all the factors we always do, that comes to it. So if they get large donations one year, they don't need it, then that's the way it should be.
If the board is interested in moving forward with this on a conditional basis with some of the requests that some of the trustees have made this evening, our administration can get together with the rescue squad and work out some of those details and come back to the board with something a little more fleshed out with the budget information.
I would support it.
That would theoretically be ready for action in the next meeting.
And I would support it that it would be a conditional thing based on just what Trustee Rosner said, because one year they may have a need and they may not. And the reason why I support this is a life-saving service. You know, this is life or death for our residents. So, you know, it's a no-brainer.
Okay.
Well, who's going to pursue it with Maplewood?
Mayor DeLuca reached out to me to organize the leadership of our rescue squads together. So I will work with our rescue squad on getting that together. And when that meeting happens, I think we'll have a clearer understanding of what Maplewood's long-term plan is too, and then we can kind of figure out where they fit.
I've spoken to Kathy Leventhal about it. We just introduced to say that we have made significant runs into Maplewood and that we would be looking for a contribution coming from Maplewood.
Okay.
As a kickoff to that. Being the vice mayor.
So I'll make sure she's included in that too.
Mayor.
Deputy mayor.
Deputy mayor.
Okay. We have two service level agreements to discuss tonight. YouthNet and the Community Coalition on Race. YouthNet is first, if people, I imagine, want to do them separately. Mr. Lewis, I don't know if you have a particular thought about how to go forward with this, other than going through each agreement from beginning to end.
Well, I think two things. One, basically what we have are essentially their proposed scope of services, and assuming where the trustees may go with this, then certainly Mr. Rother and I will work up an actual quote agreement, but the meat of it is, you know, we'll provide the services in the attached Exhibit A. So these are the real, the substantive questions of what the services are and what the value that the trustees place upon them and what the funding should be. The sort of boilerplate language would be worked out in terms of turning it into an agreement, if you will. The two different ones, I guess YouthNet's listed first. YouthNet, they have provided a description of a lot of the things they do and the programs that they run, which includes some budgetary information in terms of what estimated costs of those things are, and then they've also provided an overall budget. They have not assigned or broken down the requested village funding by activity, or, you know, we want this much for this. So whereas the CCR proposal did actually associate, well, there's sort of a global request for some staff time, but then there were breakdowns by activity. So the YouthNet, I don't know, if you go through, you know, I'm not going to just sit here and read out, but they've obviously talked about their middle school and high school program, the clubs, the YouthNet Plus, police partnership, mentoring and internships, community outreach. Again, I don't know, short of me just reading every item in there, I don't know if there needs to be discussion of what they do, what the value of it is.
Perhaps if people have objections or questions or concerns to specific parts of it, they can raise them and we can discuss them. Otherwise, my understanding is the intention of the board and the reason why both of these items are listed is they plan to move forward with them.
I think that's a good way to go.
Okay. And I know you kind of alluded to this, but that this is going to be attached to...
we would come up with an actual a contract that what would be attached is, this is the scope of services.
Service level agreement.
That's the meat of it.
Would I assume that they be interlocal agreements since they are with Maplewood, or?
Well, it would be more an agreement between us and each different entity. I think Maplewood actually contributes to both entities as well, presumably pursuant to their own direct agreement with them. Whether at some point that should sort of morph into an interlocal agreement. An interlocal agreement, necessarily requires two local governments between us and Maplewood, that's something that could certainly be explored and whether there's any benefits.
Well,
to
I
that.
raised that as a question about the insurance associated to, at least on YouthNet, that
Right.
would they fall under our JIF if we had an interlocal agreement?
Yeah, and that again, I obviously, since today, did not have an opportunity to look into that, but we can certainly check with our JIF representatives, and there might be some opportunities for savings if there was an interlocal agreement, that they could fall under the sort of quasi-governmental provision in the JIF fund, providing insurance, which could save them some money as well. But, I mean, in summary, the YouthNet budget, they indicate their request is for $15,000 from South Orange. They have a request for a similar
Barry, I'm
amount.
sorry, use the microphone, some people are
Yes,
struggling
they have
to hear
they have
every
a
word.
request for $15,000 from the village and a similar request for $15,000 from Maplewood. I'm not sure the status of the Maplewood contribution, but they outline a total operating budget of $176,000, $176,200, and combined funding between Maplewood and South Orange of $30,000.
Well, I don't have objection to those being services which we would assume as being a government and having them provided by us as a government. I do have some question about some of their budgeted line items, and looking over a year-over-year comparison, I do have some questions about specifically some of the increases that they had on their budget. But putting that aside, there are a couple other questions. I'm assuming that this is a one-time request, that their plans are to be self-sufficient next year, that this is for this year only. Am I correct in?
Well, for the record, Diane is nodding her head.
Why don't, for the record, I think it's better for her to come to the mic so she can
If there's a
respond.
question for her, sure. I'm not sure there.
I think there was a question.
Well, it's just making a statement that yes, and she's
Would
affirming
you
that
please
that's
come to the mic so she
That
can
was certainly the
respond?
representation made at the last meeting. Nobody has a crystal ball, but
If that isn't the case, YouthNet can come up and correct us, but we're acting under the impression this was a one-year agreement.
I think it's important to get it on the record. I mean,
I think it is on the record. If you'd like to come up and say it's a 1 year and then sit back down, you're certainly free to do so.
I'm sorry, Diane, not to put you on the spot, but
Yes, it's our anticipation.
Identify your
Yes, it's our
name.
anticipation and our hope that next year we will not be back doing this again.
Thank you.
So just some tweaking that may occur, looking at some of the budget line items, I have no objection to it.
Okay, it doesn't sound like there are any other objections. Mr. Lewis, would your suggestion be for the best course of action to formalize this, would to include a resolution at our adoption of our budget?
You could do it then or
to
any meeting
authorize-
thereafter, but
Okay.
I wouldn't do it before, because until the budget's in place, the funding's not in
It's
place.
gonna happen the same night, I guess.
Yeah, you could do
The
it
same,
night,
you're right.
yeah.
A
Yeah, we have a
resolution
resolution
authorizing.
with an agreement
Okay.
to which this would be attached.
Okay, that's how we'll move forward. Okay, next is a service level agreement for the Community Coalition on Race.
Bless you.
Similarly, in some respects, the coalition did also identify a variety of different programs with narrative descriptions. They provided an estimated cost of those programs and then a requested contribution amount for each particular program. They also identified their sort of overall, sort of across-the-board program costs, that was $69,000. The contribution request was $11,500, and then they did identify their programs and integration through the arts, the Interfaith Outreach Committee, the Marketing and Promotions Committee.
Barry, did you receive a budget from them this year with this request?
Well, I think the budget is spelled out within the document. It references at the very
Bless you.
beginning, the total budget's $142,950, And then if you add up all these different elements, they add up to that budget. So while it's not in a spreadsheet form, the information
It
is
adds up to, and what's the budget total number?
$142,950.
Oh, okay, everything in that, okay.
If you add up all the different amounts that they've allocated each activity, that you come up with the grand total. So it was integration through the arts, it was the marketing and promotions committee, and within a number of these, they identified different activities. Conversations on race, the neighborhoods and civic engagement committee, the schools committee, monitoring, evaluation, and research. So they go item by item and have specific contributions assigned to them, and then an overall operational support as well as the original item. So, it is a little more conducive to going and evaluating the different activities or proposed services if the board were so inclined, whereas the youth net was sort of all melded into one request.
So why don't we do the same thing? If people have questions or concerns with any piece of this from top to bottom, you can voice them and we can discuss.
One question I have, again, we talked last summer about providing space in lieu of funding. Last year we talked about funding I know Deborah, you made a proposal of half and half for this year and then no funding starting next year. Ultimately, the consensus was no funding this year, but providing the space.
Can I respond to that?
No, wait, let me finish my statement, okay?
You said Deborah, so...
Let me just finish my statement.
Okay.
So that was last summer, and then at the last meeting, we had a whole bunch of discussions. I'd like clarity. Number one, does this involve, are we talking money plus space? Are we talking money in lieu of space? And is it, again, to Mark, sort of one of your points earlier, is this year or is this in perpetuity?
I think the coalition would have to speak to the 1 year versus in perpetuity. It is my understanding that this does not involve space. I believe as I've gleaned from what I can read through the files and discussions I've had, the space offer versus the coalition currently has office space and facilities in I think a relatively favorable situation with a long-term commitment under favorable conditions, and there was a hesitancy that if they left that and took advantage of our space and what might be the uncertainty of the continued provision of that space, whether they wanted to give up, I think what they think is an extremely advantageous situation they're in. So that was my understanding, so that as proposed, this would not involve space.
Cash only deal.
Correct. As to the whether this is a 1 year deal versus in perpetuity, I haven't had that specific conversation. Obviously, to some degree, the nature of the organization, YouthNet has, I know, some opportunities for grant funding and things, but they've also, I think, have a revenue stream from some of the participants and fees that I don't know, at least it doesn't appear. There are some, it doesn't appear that there's revenue or charges for any of the, or fees charged for any of the coalitions, so they don't have that revenue stream, but I couldn't speculate whether they have an opportunity to raise funds elsewhere and outside into the private. I'd leave that to them.
Okay, go ahead.
I think we should ask Mr. Mattson if he's still here you said you were the chair of the development committee.
I'm sorry, he's no longer the chair of the organization.
Is there someone from the Community Coalition on Race that could speak to the question of whether...
I think you should talk to the executive director.
I see Nancy's here.
Well, whoever you want to appoint. I'm interested in two things. One is the question about perpetuity versus, this will be the last year of funding, and are you prepared to fundraise to cover this amount of money, or what is your plan and projection going forward in terms of fundraising? And secondly, what kind of outside fundraising do you do for corporate foundations and private foundations and so forth? Because I think Trustee Rosner made an important point that a couple of your members or board members spoke to tonight, and that is both of these organizations actually, and I don't know what the genesis of the Rescue Squad is, I can imagine, but YouthNet and CCR were more or less created by the government to fulfill a need. However, like all entities that are given birth, then you have to move on and become independent and so on and so forth. And while we, I think, understand and everyone is very supportive of the mission, and I think that's getting lost a little. It's sort of like if we cut funding, we're not supportive of the mission, and I don't think that's true. It's certainly not true on my part. I don't think it's true on the part of any of my colleagues, but as we continue to become more and more and more constrained budget-wise, we need to have confidence that in fact, this program will move forward and will be sustainable through your own fundraising efforts, and if not, then we have to do something to help you, because I don't think perpetual funding is in the cards. So this year there was some miscommunication and misunderstanding apparently, but I would like you to address those two issues.
Okay. Nancy Gagne, Executive Director of the Community Coalition on Race. We have presented in the past, in our presentations, our quarterly presentations, how the amount of fundraising that we do all throughout the year. So we do donor appeals, we run fundraising events, we try to think outside of the box, we write grants, we get grants, we do bring in grant money. Grant money tends to be for specific programming, so it's very rarely supplies funds for operational costs. So the money that we get, for instance, for integration through the arts covers the honoraria for artists, rental space, associated fees, but all of the staff effort that goes into putting on those programs has to be supported by the organization. And that's true for most of the other funding that we get, the grant funding that we get. Our budget is about $142,000, and our municipal requests total about $56,000. So clearly far less than half of our total budget. So yes, we're doing a lot of fundraising. The balance has to be made up by grants, individual donations, and fundraising events. And we have over time, and this was the presentation I think I made last spring, and I can send you that chart and hopefully update it with 2011's fundraising. We have shown that our fundraising over about 10 years has dramatically increased. There was only 1 year that there was a dramatic amount of fundraising. That was the Voices in Harmony year, the Two Towns in Harmony year. There was a large outside grant. Every other year, that's the anomaly year, every other year we're on the upswing. And over time, our municipal contributions have been reduced. So we have had to make up for that. Without municipal support in the future, we would be a different organization. We wouldn't be able to focus solely on, we cannot command the amount of individual donations to fully support the organization. We keep moving in that direction, but I can't say that is going to happen next year. And as Mr. Lewis pointed out, we don't have funding streams. Our programs are intentionally free and open to the public, with the exception, this year for the first time, we did charge a nominal fee for one of the Integration Through the Arts performances on the recommendation of the board that we applied to. So that's the response. If there are any other questions?
So there's no path to self-sufficiency at this point?
Well, there's a path for increasing there's always a path for increasing fundraising. There's always a path for seeking out more grants. If we, found a $22,500 grant, it could say, "Thank you. This year we don't need to come to you." That would be wonderful. We're always on the path to increase our donor base, to increase the revenue from our fundraising events, and to seek out more grants. I think I said that.
But cutting expenses by $5,000 to $10,000 of taking free space certainly would go a long way towards reducing that need for fundraising.
As we went over as I haven't met individually yet with Mr. Lewis, but did with Mr. Gross last year about the space. As we worked out the particulars, it was going to save us about $6,000. The original amount that was posited at that budget workshop last winter by then President Newman was around $11,000, but he was doing a kind of thumbnail sketch. I think that amount kind of, was settled in people's minds, but as we worked out the specifics, what we would save on rent, we could not be provided with phone. We would have to install our own phone. We would have internet access, and we would be able to get liability insurance. And that added up to be about $6,000. For this year, we've already paid our liability insurance. We have our contract. We had to make those decisions to move forward in 2012. But it's something that we could entertain. Yes, it would be potential cost savings, but the trustees have to feel comfortable that it's a conducive situation to be in.
What would make you feel comfortable?
Well, I can't speak for all the trustees at the moment. We'd have to, I'd have to bring it back to the table for them.
Can I ask you a question? Last year, I think a letter was sent, last July or August, a letter was sent saying there would be no funding this year. So
July.
What?
July. Our meeting was July 18th.
Okay, whatever. The letter was sent and it came up. So somehow or other you budgeted for this year, not counting on the money for this year, or were you?
I did not get a letter saying there would be no funding.
Well, there was a communication with Village Administrator John Gross.
Okay, the only conversations I had with John or emails I had with exchanges were about the space, not about no cash funding.
Getting back to Trustee Goldberg, I made a reference to me earlier regarding this discussion, and this is what I recall. YouthNet, and I was part of the startup with YouthNet, is an incredible organization. And to repeat myself, because I made this very clear, they target that middle group that gets ignored. The top performers have all the resources and the AP courses because of their ability, and the bottom group gets special funding to help them, with any special education needs. But that 60 or 70% is lost, and it's a lost opportunity for them and for the quality of life in any community. Therefore, I celebrated that. And matter of fact, I had an opportunity to help YouthNet even further the summer before last, in 2010, where I took on one of the YouthNet members for a summer internship, and they were paid. So by my actions shows you what I think of the organization. I also, and I'm speaking for myself, think highly of CCR, and I won't go over and repeat the values and what I believe it brings to the community, because it was said, and there were people who had a different perception. And the only thing I would say about any organization or any individual is that if the mission and things are pure or for the better good, like any human or like any organization, there are sometimes missteps. And if there are perceived missteps, it's through dialogue that we identify what those are, and address those challenges or issues, but we don't, I like analogies, so forgive me, throw out the, well, I won't. We don't just eliminate a organization, or we don't dismiss an individual if the mission is for the betterment of the quality, and nobody can dispute that they believe that, whether you agree with everything or not. So I recall during those budget meetings, and it was a very tough decision that we made because of how I just expressed to you I feel about the value of both organizations, but fiscally, because like all municipalities, we're getting less state aid and all the other pressures on it, and trying to maintain and trying to ensure minimal increase in property taxes, that we had agreed that neither one would be funded, and this was a fiscal decision that was very tough for me that I made, and Trustee Bauer recalls having that dialogue. So it was my recollection that we would fund the organizations for 2011, but no organizations, Main Street, YouthNet, and CCR, would be funded, except, and the only one that we fund, because we own it anyway, is the debt problem that we have with SOPAC. So, my position that I made clear last time, we're going to either fund both of these organizations, because Main Street's going to be folded into the SID, that funding, or we're not. That's my position. I value them both. I will not accept, because it's the perception of fairness. It is the perception of fairness. It is the perception of fairness. And if you have a perception that whatever the perception is, people respond to that perception, and that perception becomes reality, or that perception generates consequences and responses and images. So, my position is I will only support funding both or not funding one. I mean, or not funding both. I will not support something that is perceived to be unfair.
Thank you, Trustee Davis Ford.
So are you saying
excuse me, I have a question to the board. Is if people don't have any other questions for either members from the Community Coalition on Race, can they sit down?
Yes.
And then we can continue the board discussion.
Could I just ask a follow-up question? What I asked specifically about private foundations and corporate foundations. New Jersey has a number of very sort of liberal policy perspective type of foundations. Schumann Fund for New Jersey, Fund for New Jersey, Dodge Foundation. They all have, or many of them have arts programs as well as public policy. Do you apply to them every year?
Well, when we can find, when their philanthropic goals in that given year match what we do, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Then yes, we do. We check all of those organizations on a yearly basis, and some of them have rolling admissions. We just went through a process with Dodge. Right now, we're not eligible for Dodge. There's a smaller organization called the Puffin Foundation. They have a cycle for supporting arts. 1 year, well, you can only apply every 2 to 3 years, I believe, and they fund certain arts areas in a given funding cycle. So we keep track of where the foundations are in their funding cycle, and they change over time. There was a time when Dodge did fund the coalition. They have changed their funding priorities pretty broadly, and right now we do not fit their funding model.
When you apply to those organizations, do they take into account whether you're receiving funding from other organizations or from municipal governments?
Absolutely.
For example, would our decision to fund or not fund the Community Coalition on Race play a role in how much money you'd then be able to?
When you're asking for programmatic funding, which is, I would say a very high percentage of what you're getting from grants. That's exactly what they're looking for. They're looking for the base of your revenue sources, that there's a strong base and that they're adding something to allow you to continue programming. On the rare occasion, for instance, we applied to Ben & Jerry's. Ben & Jerry's focuses on social action groups. They're very interested in local grassroots organizations. And they will provide operational support. It's one of the very few across the country that I have found that will offer that. So, we've put in our letter of inquiry and we have not heard back from them yet.
What about Fund for New Jersey?
Fund for New Jersey, I haven't looked at yet in 2012. The last time the coalition applied, I have to go back. The coalition was rejected in the past. I have to go back and take a look at Fund for New Jersey.
They have a new director, and I would encourage you to go back. I think my frustration is that I've heard, and you have a number of new directors as well as, other esteemed long-term members of the community, and I've heard several times in the last couple of years that, you know, you're a template, you're a model. Of course, we know that throughout the nation. You have a product and a service that you can, that's remunerative to you, you know, if you get it out there, that you're ready to take the next step, things like this. You got to take the next step. Because I think that's true, and I think you need to be really beating down the doors of some of these, the Schumann Fund, the Fund for New Jersey, Dodge has a new director, they're going in a little different direction, I understand that, but there's plenty of others, there's a lot of money, this is a very affluent, foundation-rich state. And I speak from experience. I mean, my last job before this one, I ran a nonprofit for 10 years, so I know what you're up against.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Deborah, can I just ask you a question? And did you want to say something else?
I have a proposal, and that is that we fund both organizations at $15,000.
All right, that was my question to Deborah, but she's suggesting that we do the same amount. That's what I took from that.
Well, where does the 10,000 for the rescue squad come from?
You're asking him, I assume.
Yeah, that, my understanding is that's not an issue.
Well,
It's an issue. We need to.
I mean, if that is the proposal, then 7,500 comes in.
Right, where's the other 2,500 come from?
We can get that.
It's another 2,500?
$32 million, I can find 2,500.
So
Out of 32 million?
I can find 2,500.
Okay.
So if we say, as I was saying, you're suggesting the same 15 for both YouthNet and CCR.
But let me play devil's advocate. 15,000 for YouthNet, right, is 100% of what they requested from last year, right?
That's correct.
I think that's a.
15,000?
I don't think this devil's.
Do you have a problem with yes or no?
Yeah, I have a problem with your logic, but go ahead if you want.
No, it's not. It's just math. It's math. It has nothing to do with logic. Logic is, depending on who it is, can be subjective.
If we wanted to follow that.
Math is exact.
If we wanted to follow that
So,
logic, then we could go.
should I ask someone else who can do math? How about you, Mr. Chair of Finance?
Well,
15,000.
Well, you would have to look at their total budgets and what percentage of increases we see per budget.
I'm talking about, excuse me, I'm talking about what we funded the organization in 2011. What did we fund YouthNet in 2011? Does anybody have that figure?
Yeah, they were the exact.
15,000 in 2011, and they're asking for 15 this year. It's 100%.
Right. And what did we fund CCR last year? 22.
This year matched what they got.
So I'm not good at doing percentages. What is 15,000, Administrator Lewis? You're pretty good with numbers. What? So 15,000 would be giving them two-thirds of what they're asking for, but we're going to give 100% to YouthNet. So my answer to that is, would I be supportive of giving a reduction of 30-something% less to an organization? No, we're either going to do it all or not, from my opinion.
I think that the logic fails because you're leaving out the need. So if YouthNet says they need 15,000 and CCR had come forward and said we needed 12.5 this year, then you would be okay with that.
It's a perception of fairness.
Let me finish, Deborah.
Okay.
And part of it is that I have trouble with this letter that we sent out last year. And now they're saying they didn't get it. Well, I was under the impression that it was confirmed last July and that we had an email.
And then what's the letter that we sent out to YouthNet? Was a letter sent out? So why? Why would we send out a letter to one?
Could you let me finish just once?
Oh, I'm sorry. I do apologize. I am interrupting you.
So we sent the letter to them. We were told a letter was sent to them, and that the funding was there, and we were also given space. And at that meeting last year, we talked about the space value being $6,250, and you suggested also giving $6,250 in funding, which I agreed with. So that came out to a total of $12,500. So if we went by that, your logic before, then $12,500 would be 100% of funding, based on what we said at that budget meeting last year. So, not by what the request is, but by what we came up based on our meeting at the budget last year. So you can play the game both ways.
I'm not playing the game, but no, if we went by what we recall, neither YouthNet or Main Street or CCR would get anything in 2012.
Main Street was never in that discussion. It's when you keep bringing
All
it up,
right,
it
so
wasn't in the
then
discussion.
I'll leave Main Street out. But I recall, and I'm having delusions about the conversation, because Trustee Bauer recalls the same conversation, that we would not be funding any of these organizations in 2012. Since a decision was made, and I even told this to the director about maybe 5 weeks ago, Anthony Green, when he was saying about funding. I said, well, I recalled in a budget meeting that neither you or YouthNet wasn't getting any funding. Then several days after I had that conversation with the director, I get an email that came to all the trustees, and someone from YouthNet, and I don't recall who it was very excited because they were told that they were getting the full $15,000. I had to cycle back because I for credibility, and I did not want to give any misinformation, and apologize to the director of CCR, saying that I just got an email that YouthNet was getting the funding, and that in fairness, we either going to not fund both of them or we are. So my point, getting back to the math, all of the things that we talked about, what you said was true, then we shouldn't be funding anyone. But if we are going to fund YouthNet at 100% of what they're requesting, I want to do the same for that. It's that simple.
Well, there's another caveat that goes along with it. I think we discussed as well about continuing on, and what I heard this evening is that this funding doesn't stop, that this is not the last year, that they will come back next year and look for funding again. I heard from YouthNet that no, they're not going to ask, this is the last year.
I think we need to make a policy about that. I have no problem. I'm talking about the funding for this year.
We said that last July when we had our budget workshop. We went through the same kind of process where we said, this is it, this is the end. We'll send the signal. We didn't want to do it in 2012. I don't want to, continue on kicking this can down the road. That come back next year, they're coming back again for the additional funding. The other is that we need to go through and look at the various services that they're providing. I hear what you're saying, but I don't agree with totally that all of the services are those things that government needs to support, and that it should be supported through contributed income.
Trustee Levinson, I hear you, and I agree that we need to have a clear policy. One of the things I also want us to make clear in our policy is that we don't limit ourselves for getting services and resources on behalf of our residents by saying that we won't get services from nonprofits. I think that we should be talking about is these outsourcing. So that we also need to do that, because we should look at these two organizations as an organization that we're outsourcing services or getting benefits from. So we clearly need to make a clear policy and put that in place going forward. But now for this year funding, I think that we need to narrow our focus and talk about bring it back to what we're going to do. I'm absolutely there with you that we need to do a clear policy once and for all, and then we don't have to do all this dithering. But
well, we have two suggestions on it.
The proposal,
one for 15 and one for 22.
The proposal that was brought into the meeting was for 22.5. So we can take a straw poll on that, or if someone wants to propose something different, we can do that, and whatever the board wants to do, we'll bring to the next meeting. But at this point, I don't see us reaching any further consensus. I think we have to move in a direction.
Well, I would like to get the understanding about, are they coming back next year looking for additional funding? We got the answer coming from YouthNet. I'd like to hear the CCR, what position they're going to take.
It sounded like the answer was yes, but if someone from...
I heard the answer saying they're coming back.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
See, this is it. I usually refrain from I told you so, but this is why I said that, unless you're going to put out an RFP or a bid, it doesn't matter whether it's profit or for profit, but unless you're going to say we need a particular service and, go out to the marketplace and anybody can respond however they want to respond, for us to get in, we are operating right now as the board of a private foundation making grants to, you know, for very good and charitable purposes that we all support, where we don't have enough money to meet whatever their needs are, our needs, or at least our needs as they started out. And this is just going to go on and on and on. You know, there's...
But the unique thing is, and I think that Sue Meredith made, and it resonated with me really a lot, was that this governing body, along with the governing body of Maplewood, created both these entities. So it's somewhat different than us reaching out to existing groups or existing groups forming and coming to us. These two entities are creations of the governing bodies.
Yeah, I would say that I think it's important, and Trustee Levison alluded to this, that after we decide whatever we're going to do for this year, going forward, we need to, along the lines of what Trustee Bauer was saying, we need to figure out what services we need provided first, and then see if people can then provide those. Whereas right now we're kind of doing the opposite. It sounds like that maybe was the genesis of this organization many years ago, but I don't think that the board has been consistent in reevaluating whether, you know, the services that it's asking for, why it originally created these organizations. So that's something that we can do after we decide what we're going to do for this year, and I think then that will be really up to us whether we decide to fund these organizations years going forward. If we determine that the services indeed are services that we require, then putting them out to bid, I think, would be moving in a better direction about how we handle these sorts of situations. However, we still have a decision in front of us this year, which is what level to fund the Community Coalition on Race. And again, the proposal that was on the table was what it was last year, which was $22,500 for this year. And so that would be, unless there's an objection, I'm trying to move forward. Unless there's an objection, that's what I suspect we would bring to the next meeting. And if there is an objection to that, then someone should make an alternate proposal. And if that's the consensus of the board, that's what we'll do going forward. But we need to decide this now and move forward. I think we've had a lot of discussion. There's quite a bit of kind of, I don't know, complexity on our end, but it's time for a decision.
I'll be very simple. I made my position clear.
You have made your position clear.
Okay.
In the interest of the fairness of everything and the comment that Janine made before, I would put forth a resolution that we agree to fund $15,000 for this year, and then next year we go forth, as you said before. I said I would put forth a resolution to do the $15,000 to match the funding that we're doing to YouthNet for this year, and next year there is no promise of any funding.
I put forth that we support the funding put forth by both organizations. YouthNet asked for 15 and CCR asked for 22, whatever.
Well, the 22.5 is what was on the table, so if we're to move forward with the 15,000, the 22.5 has got to be decided in a negative, has to actively be decided in a negative.
There's no resolution on there for this.
That's correct, but as far as determining precedent of these discussions.
And the thing that came forth is an item on the agenda. I wasn't given anything that said what the number was for either organization.
And we've already talked about giving 10,000 for Rescue Squad, so that money has to come from somewhere.
All right, I'm not sure that's relevant.
It's completely relevant.
I think that, again, you can find that. There's a decision that this board needs to make. What was presented to it was $22,500 for the Community Coalition on Race. To decide to do something other than that, the 22.5 would first need to be decided not to be done.
I completely and utterly disagree. I've stayed silent, but last July there was an agreement made then. So if you want to play that game, we had a decision last July. The decision last July was as of January 1st, 2012, the monetary funding was zero. So that is the offer on the table. If you want to start playing that game, that's what should be negated.
Trustee Goldberg, it's really not about games, it's about what's on the agenda. And we have to move forward, and this board is clearly having difficulty doing so.
There's nothing on the agenda.
It was discussed in the last meeting that both, that put into the budget was the same funding for last year for the organizations for this year. That was the basis on which we were moving forward.
No, I think what we asked for them to come back with a proposal of a contract that they would provide to us, and we would review the contracts.
And does that not add up to $22,500?
But it doesn't necessarily say that's the amount that we're agreeing to. I can put as whatever I want into that submittal.
Could I just ask, first of all, we had a consensus at the last meeting that the budget included the full requested amount for both organizations. So I've put an alternate proposal on the table, which I thought was fair. I guess you don't, but I thought was fair. It sounds like Trustee Rosner supports it. Can I hear from Trustee Goldberg, who didn't support the budget at that level, and Trustee Levinson? Because if we don't have any more votes for 15, we might as well go with whatever the budget was that we already voted on before, and the rescue squad will just have to help fundraise. Howard, that was a request to you to speak your piece.
I'm missing what you're saying, but...
Okay.
Well, you basically, we have two options, and you're curious who's in favor of which
15.
one. Okay, and Trustee Davis Ford was in favor of the 22.5, and in favor of the 15 was...
What is it, we're going to say going once, going twice? I would prefer looking further into what they submitted to us, the services that they're providing to us, and understanding what we're paying for. I looked through both of them. I have some questions about YouthNet. Maybe some of the numbers can come down.
Okay. Well, it seems like that work needed to be done before this discussion. I mean,
Well, we just got it.
I'm not being critical, but, their proposals really haven't changed much. CCR looks the same as, I've been on this board for 3 years now, plus, a short stint, although we did have budget meetings back in 2007. Looks the same to me. So if I were going to go through this, which is really what I was hoping to avoid, I would cut out the 600 for the schools committee. I don't think this board should be funding the schools committee. They can get it from the school board if they want to. I would cut out the arts because I think there's alternatives to get the arts, and I don't view that as a government service because I agree very much with the things that you have spoken about for 2 meetings now. In other words, that's not really truly a government service, although it's probably where, one of the places that's where my heart and mind is most, has most affinity. And I would cut out $3,000 in operating support. That's about half of what we offered by the executive director's own admission. She said, I think that was worth $6,500, not what Doug Newman said it was worth, $3,000. That gets us to $17,475.
And I had one other one being the real estate. The tours.
No, I think that's central to their mission, and it's marketing the community.
I don't disagree with that. I mean, from us supporting that type of...
So what's the number you just said?
$17,475. If you cut out those 3 things.
Is that an alternative that the board...
Before the resolution, I'll second.
I move that we fund CCR at $17,475 and YouthNet at $15,000.
Second.
Do we have a roll call vote?
Thank you. Gotta get these numbers right. Thank you. Trustee Bauer?
Yes.
Trustee Davis Ford?
No.
Trustee Goldberg?
No.
Trustee Levinson?
No.
And Trustee Rosner?
Yes.
The motion does not carry.
Someone have another suggestion?
I move that we do not fund either of the groups at any amount.
Is there a second?
Okay, that died for lack of a second. I move, as we did at the last meeting, that we fund both groups at the amount that they requested, $15,000 and $22,500.
Second.
Okay, could we have a roll call vote on that one, please?
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Slow down.
Hold on, I'm tapping away here.
Would you vote, Jimmy?
I voted yes.
Okay, trustee Bauer, that was yes. Trustee Davis Ford?
Yes.
Trustee Goldberg?
No.
Trustee Levinson?
No.
And trustee Rosner?
No.
That motion does not pass.
You made a valiant effort.
Somebody's got to change their vote.
I thought it was very reasonable, the first one.
What was the first one?
17.5 and 15, or whatever that was.
And speak to the microphone. People have a right to hear. People have a
No,
right
no,
to
no.
You can't, you
Yeah.
have the conversation in public.
I think if you guys are to discuss this.
Take a break.
I
Why don't you make a motion?
I prefer.
taking a break, we'll be right back.
Make a motion.
Yeah, I don't.
Conversation has to take place in public.
No,
Council.
no.
I have to go to the bathroom.
We don't have a quorum.
No, we still do.
Take 5 minutes.
I know.
This is absurd.
Council?
I'm not recessing this meeting. No, I don't think this is appropriate at all.
You lost your quorum now, Mr. President.
Then the meeting is recessed, but I'm not recessing it. We can't even figure out what we're doing this year.
I don't care, that's why what we know.
Is that going to be the headline?
Yeah, tighten up.
How many times has that happened to go in body meetings of yours, Robin?
This is the second time in my career.
Oh, it's the second time.
Second time in my career.
And the other one time wasn't here in South Orange?
That's correct.
It was?
It was not.
Oh, okay. The lone person sitting.
Am I invisible?
Yes. Yeah, just
I don't know if it's the camera or if it's the truck. It could be important. If you lose sound back there. That still works as far as recording goes. Everything's working. I've never touched that. She knows that's not
It's the track
burned out there. Pixel board. We're looking at our clocks.
Another tape.
You know, I understand the it's not I haven't recommended, but
Steve, we don't need a majority of the entire governing body to pass a resolution, do we? We put that in the charter change, but that isn't adopted yet.
No.
I mean, people walking away from this meeting doesn't mean we can't still vote on this.
But you had.
You have to have a quorum.
We do have a quorum right now. Now you do, because everyone's back.
Everybody's back.
Well, too bad Nancy's not here. You can make it a 3-3 vote and let you break it up.
well, before this strange and perhaps
I actually would vote, so I could vote for it.
maybe.
I have an additional suggestion.
Uh-huh.
How about if we fund the groups differentially? I didn't work out the numbers while I was in the bathroom, but fund the groups differentially, but cut them by the same amount, the same percentage from their budget request in order to free up some money for the rescue squad.
So if you cut each one 20%, I'm just making up a number, if you cut each one 20%, that would be whatever the number is.
I would support that because it's consistent and fair.
Although, I would just like to add a note that, Mr. Lewis, correct me if I'm wrong, that isn't necessary to be able to fund the rescue squad.
Correct.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with the rescue squad.
Oh,
So,
okay.
the rescue squad can be funded, the funding is there, so I don't even want to muddy the water with that. But with your trustee Bauer, through you, Mr. President, excuse me, trustee Bauer, that meets my value, and that's fairness. So if you make a proposal where the reduction is the same percentage equally for both, I would support that.
Deborah, I mean, with all due respect, you keep mentioning fairness. I have to say, there's so many, I mean, I just don't think that's fair. We gave one organization notice last July, crystal clear. They gave notice. The other organization, we did not. And to the other point of fairness, as I mentioned last time, there are numerous organizations that we give nothing to. For example, last night was the Holocaust Remembrance Service, an organization put together by a ceremony that's put together every year by volunteers. In fairness, we don't give them any money. I don't think anyone in this room would argue that's not no one would argue that's not a worthy cause. It's incredibly worthy, incredibly important, but it's funded completely by volunteers. So when we're talking fairness, there's apples and oranges that we're talking about. I just want to be clear about that.
But they're not on the agenda that we're discussing. I want to keep my focus narrow, consistent, and fairness. And so we're not talking about any other entities or organizations regarding funding tonight, except for the Coalition on Race and YouthNet, and that's all I want to have my focus and my dialogue and my decision-making process about. And secondly, fairness is subjective. I try to be objective as possible, and I'm flawed like anyone else, but I think I do a pretty good job of coming as objective as possible.
Well,
So, getting back to the proposal, would you like to?
I'd like to make a comment first, in fairness. I think YouthNet has done a good job in coming back to us with asking for less monies than, if you look from year to year and about the services that they're providing on a year-to-year basis, they have significantly increased the number of services that they're providing, but asking for the same amount of money. They've done a better job in controlling their funding. If you want to look at it from fairness, then I would look to YouthNet to increase its request for allocation based upon the amount of additional services that they're going to provide. But they're not. They put forth something, and they made an affirmative statement that then they're coming back next year for additional funding. I haven't heard that from the CCR.
Trustee.
And the reason I'm voting no on each one of these is that I haven't heard what are we going to do going forward.
Trustee Levinson, I think I agree with you about what we're going to do going forward. I think that's a separate discussion because I'm there with you, and I respect you highly, but I think what's important tonight to move forward is that we have to come up with some sort of proposal that we can get a consensus of a majority. It appears that Trustee Bauer has come up with a proposal that can be approved. None of the other proposals are going to be approved. They'll fail, or they will fail.
Then Trustee Bauer should make the proposal. I don't know if you were working out the numbers there just before.
Yeah.
I think at this point we've had
Probably
enough
higher
discussion.
math.
We need to figure out what this board is doing going forward.
Okay, so I propose to fund YouthNet at $12,000 and CCR at $18,000. That's a 20% reduction in their requested budget requests. And I would just like to speak to Trustee Levison one more time to see if I could pick up your vote. I agree with you. It's funny because I think it reflects a lot of other conversations that we have in this community on completely separate subjects. So it's sort of like, are you going to go with fairness and the perception of fairness, you know, as objective or subjective as that may be, or are you going to look at the individual organizations and how much effort they've made and whether you think they're meritorious and all this other kind of stuff? I tend to agree with you on the merit, but we have to move forward. We're already here, and you know, you introduced the budget including this. I realized that after, you know, there were 5 votes on the budget last meeting, we all said, okay, well, we'll sit down and, you know, go through and comb through and everything, you know, this is what that begot.
It's,
So
but budgets are appropriations, they're not approvals.
we should not be appropriating to these nonprofit charities the way we're
I
doing.
agree.
Okay,
That's...
okay. So next year we'll have it. So that's what's on the table.
No, that's the one piece that's not
12,000
clear.
Did I do that right? Okay.
Janine,
Please,
that's
I can
one
do
piece
third
that's not
grade.
clear. I don't know what we're doing next year.
I
Trustee
second
Levison,
it.
You're going to be able to do whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
People can propose anything they want, but it's up to...
No, what we're going to have is that somebody...
Same thing next year.
Next year, we're going to
Did
have...
you make a motion?
Well, I think
Let her
Trustee
finish
Levinson
speaking.
is trying to make a friendly amendment to
Yeah, I
my,
think- yeah, I
so
think we
so
should
let
tie-
me
if we're
let me
gonna tie the two
interpret your.
organizations together, we should tie next year's funding.
Right.
together, too.
They
Yes.
said that...
I said even earlier than the last meeting that we've got to have a simultaneous resolution that this is it, over, done.
agree with that.
Okay. You agree with that? You agree with
Yes.
that? I agree with that.
Yes.
I believe everybody agrees with
The
that.
only thing I
I'm not
disagree
sure
with,
about that.
I'm concerned about a 20% cut being too much for at least youth men. I just don't see it. I'm not, and I don't,
Wait a
and I'm
minute,
not, I don't
wait.
want to speak for her. We can call her up and ask what that does to her budget or what her plan does for this year or what she has to cut. So.
Well, I understand that. On the other hand, her budget is increasing. I mean, she really increased services.
Significant
so,
services.
Yeah. So that's a good thing and a source of solace for us to some extent. Because I don't think that's what happened in CCR. So I think CCR, it's a real cut, quote unquote, as opposed to a cut in expanded services to cut back. But I think, you know, in accordance with the merit-based conversation that we were just having, I think it's an appropriate incentive that they have to go out there and beat down the doors of the corporate foundations and the private foundations and so on and so forth. But Trustee Rosner, in response to my saying that at a prior meeting that we had to have a simultaneous resolution of no more funding, you didn't like tying our hands on future budgets in that regard. So I would be happy to either make that part of my resolution or make that the next resolution, but if I don't pick up your vote, a little concerned about that.
Yeah, you know, my concern always is that there could always be some organization that...
I wouldn't want to tie our hands either.
And, you know, so I wouldn't want to tie future boards' hands.
I agree.
And I also agree with the RFP process before, but although it's sort of a self-fulfilling answer when there's only one group that may fulfill a certain thing. So, you know, if you say you need a volunteer rescue squad in South Orange, there's really only one group that's going to come forth for that service. I think.
And that's okay, as long as you have it in the
I
resolution.
understand. So it's sort of, yeah, but it's sort of disingenuous to do that, but
Okay.
But
Well,
make your
my
proposal.
my-
Make your proposal, and it doesn't matter if
Would you make a
Trustee
suggestion?
Bauer, before you say that, does the board want to entertain the question to YouthNet about what a 20% cut would do?
No. Because why are we going to have that discussion? Because,
I think you have to ask both of them, but that's, you know.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, then
We can ask both.
we'll be like a dog, but
But I don't know that it matters.
But then it takes us
in a
away
sense.
from, we had 3 proposals that failed. She finally came up with one when she can get a majority. So why are we going to have that whole dialogue all over again?
Then we won't.
Through you, Mr. President.
Okay, the
would you make-
resolution is
Thank you.
12,000 for YouthNet and 18,000 for CCR, which is a 20% reduction in the budget request that they made for fiscal 12.
I second.
Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Are you going to do futures or not?
That's
I
a
thought
whole,
you said
the motion has been moved in second, so.
Are you going to vote for it if I do that?
yes.
Are you going to vote for it if I do that?
Do what?
Let's say nothing next year.
The motion has been moved and second. Can we please take a vote? That's a whole separate, I told you I was there about a policy about the future, as long as it doesn't tie our hands.
It's got to be a separate vote,
There's a
Howard.
motion
It's
on the
separate.
floor.
There
I'm not
there
gonna
is, and
tie
if we could
it.
take a
It's
roll call
separate.
vote on that.
Thank you. Trustee Bauer,
Yes.
Trustee Davis Ford,
Yes.
Trustee Goldberg,
No.
Trustee Levinson. Trustee Rosner.
So you would agree to this?
I agree with,
I said we should do this as a separate resolution.
It's in perpetuity.
What?
All
Say
right.
yes.
Okay,
Trustee Rosner.
Yes.
So that motion passes.
He did say yes.
Did he indeed say yes?
I did
Yes.
say yes. He did. I did say yes, but I would also like to move forward the resolution that we're not.
All right, well, let's finish
Make a
this.
motion. Make a motion.
Let's finish this.
Hold on, let's just make sure we're all clear on what the board just did, just so there's no confusion next meeting. The board made a motion, which it passed.
I prefer the confusion.
Yes.
I know you do. To agree to 20% of the requested amounts for both. The 20% reduction
Right.
in the amounts
We agreed to
requested
80%.
by both the Community Coalition on Race and YouthNet.
Yeah, and I would love to hear
Is that correct?
Yes, she already
Okay.
took it, so.
I'm making sure that we're all on the same page. There's
But
been a
you
lot of
didn't-
confusion so
You
far.
didn't give the opportunity for the clerk to finish the whole process, which she would have said, you know, it passed.
she did say it.
I did.
Okay.
I just want to make sure.
Hold on.
Go ahead, make your other.
Okay.
I want to think about how to word it, but,
Okay, well, that was the last discussion item for this.
Wait a minute.
I said I want to put forth the resolution.
Right.
Then make it, or do it next week,
I'll
next
make,
meeting.
I'll write it up and make it.
Yeah,
Okay,
but-
so
yeah,
we'll do it next meeting.
week.
So that was the last discussion item. Under new business, Trustee Gould asked for a
Yes,
statement to be read
yeah.
into the record.
Mr. President and trustees, Trustee Gould had sent a written statement. She asked if I would read it into the record and present it to you as a board. Her statement is the following. I would like to request that money be put back into the budget for a business recruiter. This money was removed from the budget in anticipation of the Special Improvement District discussion. Now that the SID has been passed and adopted by the Board of Trustees, I'd like to see money reinstated to the budget so that the SID board is able to hire a business recruiter as soon as the SID board is formed and established. The original funding requested for a business recruiter was $40,000 per year. Assuming the position will be hired in September of this year, 2012, approximately $13,500 would be needed as funding in the 2012 budget for the position, with an understanding that $40,000 would be set aside in next year's 2013 budget. The downtown is at a critical moment in its development. We must attract new stores that reflect our vision for the downtown, and we must attract a variety of retail establishments. This cannot be accomplished without a business recruiter.
Thank you.
Trustee Gould's statement.
I'll just, I mean, I didn't know what that statement was going to be. I mean, I raised this at the last meeting, and we had discussed this previously in our September meeting, when some residents or business owners came forth and suggesting that we do this. And you go, again, the minutes reflected that we all nodded our heads and said, yep, we agree, this is a good idea, and no action was ever taken. So I would like to, agree with her that this is a good idea, and that money should be put in the budget.
But the same, well, first of all, saying money should be put in the budget when we've already voted on the first budget. Now you're saying we're going to change the tax increase to a higher number.
No, not at all.
And what are you saying? Where's the 40,000
Well,
coming from?
we've been playing this game all
And,
night.
number two is we thought that the business recruitment was going to be part of a SID, and the SID first collection, until we appoint the board and everything else, we're talking probably with less than half a year.
No, but what you're proposing is putting the burden on the SID. We're suggesting.
I'm not forcing putting the bid on the SID.
What
I'm
Nancy's suggesting, and I agree with her, is that the village should take responsibility for it.
Well, I suggested, and I spoke about this with Nancy a while ago, that probably we should continue down the path of 50-50 with the SID being involved with this. But the SID is not up and running yet, and we passed it, and we looked at an August 15th date, I think, for the first tax collection date. of the SID, and by then, we also hope to have an executive director picked. And as I said, depending on who the executive director is, could also depend on how much experience they have in business recruitment and how much feeling they have and what the budget would be for this. Right now, it's just an open number, so you want to add $10 or $20 or $30,000 to the budget when we don't know what that person's really going to cost us.
But it's a different, the question is, are we adding this to the budget of the SID, or are we going to add it to the village, the budget of the village? It's really the simple question.
And I think the answer is the SID. I don't understand why we would create a special improvement district and then take on more, and I don't understand why we would create an improvement district and then take on more downtown management responsibilities. There's absolutely no reason why we should be discussing this at this point, especially considering the fact that we just cut money to nonprofits that perform a very valuable service to the town. Why we're considering adding in more money like this, I don't really understand.
Because this was discussed.
Actually, I'm not finished if you'll let me finish. Thank you. I think that we created the special improvement district to manage downtown responsibilities. A business recruiter is a downtown responsibility. We already introduced the budget. I mean, I don't know why this is coming up at this point. And I don't understand why this is not 100% crystal clear part of the Special Improvement District's mission.
Well, I don't know why it's not 100% crystal clear that this was discussed in a September meeting. This board, the minutes will reflect, this board agreed to it. The minutes reflect that it would be discussed at an upcoming budget workshop, and somebody dropped the ball, it never happened. I raised it at the last meeting when we were discussing the budget, and every time we were playing kick the can down the road. This is something we cumulatively agreed to when merchants were standing here. I love how decisions change when nobody's in the room, but suddenly when people are in the room, we change our minds. It's just, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, then you should have brought it up at the budget workshop where someone dropped the ball. You know, discussing it at this point is pretty late in the process. It's not any one person's responsibility. If this is a priority of the board, someone on the board should have brought it up at that point. That was the appropriate time to do so, not now. It's very late in the process to even consider this, and again, the only responsibility for this item being dropped is on this governing body sitting right here.
It's no different than we're suddenly adding a discussion about the rescue squad, which, gee, we're talking about for the very first time tonight. This is no different than that. We all value the rescue squad, and that's a decision we make, and that's a good thing.
Except that we didn't create an EMS management agency and then task them with the responsibility of managing all of this. We created the special improvement specifically for this purpose.
Again, if it's your opinion, go back. The minutes are clear, and let the record reflect this was discussed and agreed to by the majority of this board. You're changing your minds now. That's fine. That's your decision.
I don't actually agree that we're changing our mind. I agree that we changed the way and the timing that we were doing it. And I just don't think, I think it would make more sense to do it in conjunction with the SID and have the executive director and come up with a plan of how we're going to do it. And whether it's funded by us or through the SID or partnership,
well, that's the question. If it's not funded by us, it's not. If it's not in the budget, it's not funded by us. You're transferring the responsibility of that to the SID.
They're probably not going to. I don't see that the SID, based on their pro forma they gave us, that the business recruitment is going to be one of the first topics they tackle. It's probably going to be a full-blown topic next year, and I'm fine with adding it to the budget or a portion of it to the budget. But I don't see adding it to the budget when they don't have the executive director hired yet. They don't have their plan. We have not approved the SID budget yet. So there's a whole bunch of steps that would think to be logical other than just throwing this money in the budget. And I'm not disagreeing we should have this business recruitment person, but I'd like to see what the executive director that's hired for the SID, what they say, how much experience they have in business recruitment, and the landlords that are on the SID board, what their feeling is with this.
But I'm not saying anything different. But the question is, are we allocating the money for the village to spend it, or are we expecting the merchants to pay for it? That's really the question.
We've been going down a 50.
Expecting the merchants to pay for it.
Well, I'm actually saying we've been going down a 50-50 path on this thing, and I think we should continue that. I think we should continue. We're putting up about 50% of the funding for the SID the first year, actually much more than 50%.
But the money that we've already kind of put in that bucket in the proposed budget is for services that the village is currently providing. And the money that goes to Main Street.
The money from Main Street, that $50,000, our contract has some very specific services in there. And some of those services are likely to disappear because the way the SID's set up will not be able to handle some of those functions, like the review of the plans. We talked about the planning board review of the plans. That's one of those services that will probably come out of there. We can put a different service into that contract. And a business recruitment could very easily be part of that contract, of a new contract with Main Street, where we could say, we allocate $15,000 or $20,000 of the Main Street contract to be towards business recruitment. And I don't see what would be unreasonable about that, but I would want to discuss this with the executive director and the SIG board. If you want to just arbitrarily pick a number and throw it into the budget, and if we have the money, or the money's already there in the budget, then I'm fine with it, but I don't see saying that this is going to happen certainly before the fourth quarter of this year. I certainly would not want to hire a business recruiter at the same time we have a sit-in and an executive director still to get formed and hired.
Again, just for the record, I'm pulled up now the September 12th special meeting minutes.
Of last year.
Of last year, 2011. Ben Salmon had requested that disappointment that we cut items in the budget about the downtown, urged the board to consider adding funds for a business recruiter. Trustee Gould responded she will be encouraging the board to reconsider funding a business recruiter in the 2012 budget. During our brief discussion, the board agreed to include funding a part-time business recruiter in the 2012 budget and will be discussed further in budget workshop meetings.
We also thought then the SIG would be created sooner too. So.
I'm just telling you, the record reflects we agreed to at that time.
We also had a much earlier target date for having the SIG board created, so.
And we also didn't discuss it in an upcoming budget workshop.
Because we didn't have any.
We did have budget workshops, we sure did. It does not sound like there's any consensus to move forward with this at this point. If someone else wants to bring this up at a later date, that's fine, but we need to move on. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I move.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.